Chapter 4708. The giant electric eel was severely injured in an instant, but it did not fall. Instead, it let out a ferocious roar and shrouded the entire area with an electric field again. However, this time, it wasn't just one bolt of black lightning that fell from the sky. Instead, there were dozens of them, plowing through the entire Heavendow Mountain. The primordial battlefield, which was already filled with wretched souls, was now filled with corpses. At the same time that the black lightning destroyed the world, Lin Yi's body suddenly trembled. Maybe it was an illusion, or maybe it was real, but he felt that he had been struck by one of the black lightning. At this moment, he could even clearly see that there were terrifying electric currents running wildly throughout his body. His bodily functions were instantly destroyed, and all his senses were completely gone. Lin Yi's mind suddenly went blank. Other than his primordial spirit, his physical body was struck for no reason. Was he dead? Dead? What kind of death is this? The ghost's disdainful laughter suddenly sounded in his mind. If this is considered dead, I would have died 108,000 times. Lin Yi was shocked. He was completely immersed in the memory fragment and did not expect the ghost to join in the fun. He hurriedly asked, "Then what is this? Why do I feel that my whole body is not mine? I don't know where you got the luck to be favored by a super sea beast. This is a great opportunity." The ghost's tone was filled with disbelief. A great opportunity? What do you mean? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. At this moment, he had completely lost control of his body, which made him tremble with fear. He was struck by the black lightning for no reason. Where did this so-called opportunity come from? You still don't understand? It's just an inherited memory fragment in the sea of consciousness. Do you think that under normal circumstances, there would be lightning striking you? The ghost kept him in suspense and asked instead of answering. This shouldn't be normal. Lin Yi shook his head. This situation was somewhat similar to watching a 3D movie. Thinking about it carefully, it felt like something had popped out of the screen. That's why I said it's fate. I'm afraid it's the remnant will of the electric eel you encountered before, and it resonated with this one, causing the phenomenon to happen. The ghostly thing speculated thoughtfully. Then I'm just unlucky. Even if I didn't receive any actual damage, you call being scared a big deal? Lin Yi didn't know what to say. So it was because he had a lightning attracting formation on him. That was why he had materialized the scene in the other party's memory fragments and projected it over. What an undeserved calamity. Kid, you really don't know how lucky you are. Weren't you lamenting about not being able to truly obtain the electric eel's inheritance last time? Now that I've given you a chance, you're still not satisfied? The ghostly thing snorted. What? Senior, are you saying that I can obtain its inheritance just by being struck by it like this? Lin Yi was pleasantly surprised. The giant electric eel was no weaker than the 5-poison flood dragon. The scene just now, in particular, made him shudder from the depths of his soul. If he could obtain its inheritance this time, wouldn't he be able to master a heaven-defying killing move that was comparable to the 5 elements killing aura? I'm just saying that there's a possibility. The specifics will depend on your luck. I don't have to say any more nonsense. You'll know after checking the situation in your body, the ghostly thing said. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi hurriedly used his divine sense to open his internal vision. The current situation immediately made him speechless. He still couldn't feel anything in his body. From time to time, he could see dangerous electric arcs flashing across his body. Wherever these electric arcs passed, his flesh would be scorched black, especially those fragile meridians which would basically explode on the spot when the electric arcs passed by. There was no exception. Lin Yi's heart was pounding. If this continued, his body would be electrocuted into charcoal in minutes. Could it be that he would be like a ghostly thing from now on? Could he only rely on his primordial spirit to live? If ordinary people saw this scene, most of them would probably be scared to death. However, after a moment of shock, Lin Yi calmed down again and turned to re-examine the horrifying scene in his body. After careful observation, he finally found an exciting phenomenon. Although the parts damaged by the electric arcs were scorched black in a short period of time and seemed to be necrotic, after a moment, He found that these places were slowly exuding vitality, as if they were reborn after death. The originally scorched black places could break out of the cocoon and be reborn. Not only could it restore vitality, but it also gave Lin a feeling that it was even stronger than before. Watching his body being destroyed by the electric arcs over and over again, but then spontaneously recovering again and again like a cockroach, Lin was overjoyed. He couldn't help but think of the several times he had tempered his body in the stone door of the cave. Yes, these electric arcs were indeed extremely dangerous. If one was not careful, one would die. However, as long as one could survive, one would eventually be reborn and reborn. I don't know what to say about your talent, kid. You're obviously just a human, but your tenacious vitality is almost as strong as us spirit beasts. I'm afraid ordinary spirit beasts can't compare to you. Are you the illegitimate child of the spirit beast king? The ghostly thing sighed and laughed strangely. When Lin heard this, his face immediately darkened. You're the illegitimate child of the spirit beast king. Your whole family is the illegitimate child of the spirit beast king. Since his physical body could withstand the lightning tempering, Lin finally relaxed and returned his attention to the memory fragment. Naturally, his focus was still on the giant electric eel. Although the giant electric eel suffered a great loss when it was attacked by 3 beings of the same level as it, in the face of its super killer move that could destroy heaven and earth, whether it was the woman playing the zither, the hydra, or the unknown super sea beast, none of them had a good ending. Even if they weren't killed on the spot, they were all seriously injured and on the verge of collapsing. The giant electric eel's attack was successful. Lin thought that it would definitely try to kill the 3 fellows who had joined forces to attack it. However, unexpectedly, its next move was to turn around and run. Watching the giant electric eel fly away, Lin was dumbfounded. Only then did he remember that this fellow was also seriously injured and was on the verge of dying. Although it looked like it still had the strength to kill them, this was not a one-on-one fight. There was no telling when a strong enemy would appear next to you and take your life at any time. At the beginning, the sneak attack was successful. Now that the situation was not good, it ran away without any hesitation. Lin really didn't expect the giant electric eel to be so cunning. He thought it would use its strength to fight to the end. Chapter 4709. At this moment, he looked at the Zither girl, the Hydra, and the Super Sea Beast. They could only watch helplessly as the giant electric eel escaped. Instead, they got themselves into big trouble. When it rains, it pours. They had actually been targeted by other terrifying existences. This chaotic battle lasted for an unknown period of time. No one knew who had the last laugh. In any case, Lenny could not possibly know the result. He also did not know what the fate of the giant electric eel was. This was because when he watched half of it, this huge memory fragment suddenly shattered. The obsession that had been calling him before also disappeared. The world instantly returned to peace. Phew, he let out a long breath. He suddenly woke up from the memory. He looked around with a surprised expression. He was drenched in cold sweat. He felt like he had just had a nightmare. Fortunately, he had watched the memory fragment from the perspective of a bystander. Otherwise, if he had been there in person, he would not have needed to be attacked by those terrifying existences. Just the physical pressure alone would have crushed him into pieces. Subconsciously looking around, he suddenly froze. He finally reacted. He did not know when his body had returned to normal. In fact, it should be said that he had been reborn and had become stronger. He checked his body curiously and realized that his body's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Even his meridians were much more resilient than before, and this wasn't the most shocking thing to him. His body was stronger than 10 years of training, but that wasn't what shocked him the most. What really shocked it was the surging vital chi in his meridians. There was a faint trace of the power of thunder and lightning. Originally, you were a freak of the 5 elements and 7 attributes. Now, you have become a freak of the 5 elements and 8 attributes. If the attribute of your spiritual root is tested, the world will be in chaos. The ghostly thing sighed. Senior, are you saying that I have the thunder attribute? Lin, he said with some disbelief. Although he felt that it was inconceivable at this moment, he could clearly feel the power of thunder and lightning in his body. There was no doubt about this. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 5 elemental spiritual roots were complete, and at the same time, it also possessed the 2 ethereal attributes of ice and mist. Now, there was an extremely rare thunder property. Lin, he suddenly felt that he had made a big profit in the trial of West Island this time. Even if he couldn't get the Thunder Xianrot Tan later, the extra thunder property alone would far surpass all the treasures of heaven and earth, which couldn't be obtained even if he begged for it. Not bad. It's all thanks to that electric shock just now. It seems like that big electric eel really wanted to pass on its inheritance to you. It even flattened such an obstacle for you. With your comprehension ability, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to cultivate its lightning techniques. The ghostly thing cackled. Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had been longing for the giant electric eel's peerlessly powerful thunder and lightning killer move for a long time. How could he hold back after hearing this? He couldn't wait to try it out for the first time. Not to mention the earth-shattering heavenly punishment move, just a flash of the deep purple electric arc would give him another powerful trump card. Chi-Chi, although it was his first attempt, after a short while, the power of thunder and lightning swimming in his meridians had been successfully gathered by him. Electric arcs flashed on his fingertips, and they gathered more and more, gradually covering his whole palm. From a distance, it looked like he was wearing a thunderbolt glove, giving people an extremely unreal sci-fi feeling. Why is it blue? Lin, he looked at the jumping electric arcs in his palm and frowned. The most common electric arcs of the giant electric eel were dark purple, and the killer move Heavenly Punishment was even black. Why was it an ordinary blue in his hand? The deterrent feeling suddenly weakened by 10 levels. The ghostly thing burst into laughter. If it had a physical body, it would have been rolling on the ground by now. It laughed so hard that it couldn't catch its breath. Boy, you really make me laugh to death. Thunder and lightning is the innate ability of the big electric eel, and its strength and realm are already above the sea-splitting stage. That's why it can emit dark purple and even black electric arcs. You're just a human in the nascent soul stage, and you want to be like it? Are you kidding me? Hearing the ghostly thing say that, Lin, he couldn't help but blush. It seemed that he was indeed a bit whimsical. The giant electric eel could rely on dark purple electric arcs to sneak attack and kill sea-splitting stage experts. With his current strength, it was really too much to want to make such a killer move. For Lin Yi, who had just entered the sect, it was already quite good to be able to master the most basic blue electric arcs. As for turning the electric arcs into dark purple, it meant that the power would increase by at least 10,000 times. This was not something that a mere nascent soul stage could do. Not to mention humans, even spirit beasts with thunder and lightning talent couldn't do it. As for the black thunder and lightning that was like heavenly punishment before reaching the sea-splitting stage, this kind of thing could only be thought of in the mind. It was too far away. He felt the power of the thunder and lightning in his hand. It was more than enough to deal with ordinary people, but it wasn't enough to deal with high-level cultivators. It was too far away from his expectation that it would be comparable to the 5 elements murderous chi. Lin, he sighed slightly. It seemed that he had to diligently cultivate in the future. Otherwise, this thunder and lightning killer move that he had high hopes for would only become a dispensable burden in the future. That would be too much of a waste. Putting away the electric arcs on his palm, Lin, he finally had the time to look around. This heavenly Dao mountain, apart from being shrouded in a blood-red fog, actually didn't have any special place. There weren't any plants in sight, only a large area of potholes. It seemed that it was the traces left behind by the great battle in the ancient times. Apart from the potholes, what surprised Lin was that there were many people sitting cross-legged in this place. It seemed that every one of them was in a state of enlightenment. Some were surprised, some were smiling, and some were frowning. Everyone's expression was different. The only thing they had in common was that they seemed to be immersed in some kind of illusion and couldn't extricate themselves. If there was no accident, they were most likely like Lin E, attracted by some kind of existence's soul obsession. There was a large crowd of people. Lin E thought that these were the participants who walked faster than him. However, after he roughly estimated the number of people, he suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. The number of people sitting here far exceeded the number of people who participated in this trial. In other words, most of these people have been sitting here for several years, decades, or even hundreds of years. If it was just a simple inheritance of obsession, generally a few days would be enough. A year was the limit. However, these people had been sitting here for decades, or even hundreds of years. Many of them had even become corpses. There was only one explanation. They were trapped here and couldn't extricate themselves. Chapter 4710. No wonder this place was a place of death. Lin E couldn't help but sigh. Although this place had a kind of attraction to him, because of the obsession of the giant eel, it couldn't really control his consciousness, let alone make him unable to extricate himself. However, the people here were different. They had already lost themselves. Unspecified currency, Lin E was a little emotional. He didn't intend to touch these people. Everyone had their own opportunities. Whether they obtained the inheritance or died, it had nothing to do with Lin E. However, there was one exception. No matter what, Lin E had to bring Hui Yudi out of this place. After all, this place was too confusing. Since Hui Yudi came in because of him, he naturally had the responsibility to bring her out. He couldn't let her die like the others. Lin E scanned the crowd and found Hui Yudi's figure at the edge. At this time, this girl was also frowning. Even when Lin E walked in front of her and called her, she didn't respond at all. Lin E suddenly hesitated. Hui Yudi's situation wasn't very good. But what if she was obtaining some ancient inheritance? If he interrupted her, wouldn't it ruin her good thing? Forget it. In a place like this, if you want to obtain the inheritance from the endless resentment and obsession, maintaining your self-awareness is the most basic condition. Otherwise, you can only sit here and wait for death. Do you think this chick can wake up on her own? The ghostly thing sneered at the right time. Lin E made up his mind. Without saying anything, he directly carried Hui Yudi and left. He didn't have the slightest reluctance to leave this place. Anyway, he had already obtained what he wanted. After a moment, Lin E carried Hui Yudi out of the range of Tiandao Mountain. As soon as they left the shroud of the blood-colored fog, Hui Yudi immediately woke up. She found that she was carried on Lin Yi's shoulder. Immediately, she let out a scream. Lin Yi was shocked by her high decibel. His hand trembled, and he almost dropped her to the ground. With great difficulty, he stabilized his body. In the end, he found that the place his hand touched was a little soft. He was stunned on the spot. Big pervert. Put me down. Hui Yudi was so embarrassed that her cheeks were about to bleed. She struggled with all her might on Lin Yi's shoulder. Lin Yi quickly put her down. Seeing that she was so angry that her face was red, he could only explain with embarrassment. I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. If you're not careful, forget it. Hui Yudi quickly interrupted him, afraid that he would say something embarrassing. She looked Lin Yi up and down and took the opportunity to change the topic. Look at you. Why aren't you affected at all? Oh, you knew you were being affected? Lin Yi looked at Hui Yudi strangely. He thought that she would be ignorant, but he didn't expect her to be conscious. Of course I do. In fact, I have memories from the beginning to the end, but I don't know why, but I just can't extricate myself. It wasn't until you carried me out that I truly woke up, Hui Yudi said with a red face. So that's how it is. I wasn't affected. Maybe it's because my willpower is stronger. Also, after I obtained some benefits, this place lost its attraction to me. Lin Yi gave a general explanation. He didn't go into detail about what he experienced. You still want to keep secrets from me? Petty. Hui Yudi snorted unhappily. Lin Yi immediately smiled bitterly. What do you mean keep secrets from you? After just a few days of interaction, this girl really didn't treat him as an outsider. They weren't familiar enough to share such secrets, right? Although he felt that it was a little ridiculous, seeing Hui Yudi's angry look, Lin, he could only say, "Actually, it's not really a secret. I just obtained some enlightenment on this heavenly Tao mountain, but this kind of thing can't be said in a few words, let alone explained clearly." It was an excuse he had no other choice, and half of it was true. After all, Lin, he couldn't possibly tell this girl everything he'd been through, could he? It'd be a huge problem if she were to spill the beans, and it'd be a good thing for both of them to just brush it off like this. All right, at least you have some sense. Huiyuti nodded her head in disappointment. Although there was still some curiosity in her eyes, at least she wouldn't get to the bottom of it in the short term. Looking back at the heavenly Tao mountain behind them, Lin, Yi, and Huiyuti looked at each other and immediately continued on their way. The previous bath and the twists and turns in the heavenly Tao mountain added up to a lot of time, and they had to make up for it as soon as possible. Although the 10,000-year Great Canyon was much more dangerous than the outside world, for Lin Yi, these roadblocks were not much of a threat. Under his omnipresent divine sense, most of them could be avoided early on. Even if there were a few that couldn't be avoided, he could easily kill them in one move, so their journey was quite smooth. Other than the strange local specialties like the dummy vine, Lin, Yi, and Huiyuti would occasionally see one or two other trial takers. These people obviously came from the side of the heavenly Tao mountain. Otherwise, Lin Yi believed that most of them would sit on the heavenly Tao mountain until they died, instead of walking in front of the two of them. After these people noticed Lin, Yi, and Huiyuti, they all chose to stay far away from them. After all, the slap that sent Scarface flying was deeply engraved in their hearts. No one dared to provoke such a fierce guy. Even if they got a little closer, they would be afraid of dying a wrongful death. So the farther they stayed, the better. Finally, after a long and arduous journey of 5 days, Lin, Yi, and Huiyuti successfully crossed the 10,000-year Great Canyon and arrived at the end of the canyon, where there was a huge, lifeless stone array. As far as the eye could see, it gave Lin Yi the feeling that this should have been a rather grand and magnificent building complex. But for some reason, it was now in such a dilapidated state. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed, or perhaps it was destroyed by the aftermath of the ancient battle. Regardless, there was no doubt that this was the end of the 10,000-year Great Canyon. As for what lay beyond, they could only find out after passing through this huge stone array. Chapter 4711. That's right, it's here. Huiyuti took out the map and looked at it carefully. She nodded at Lin Yi excitedly. Reaching this place meant that the Thunder Xian vine wasn't far away. In her estimation, she thought it would take at least half a month to reach here. She didn't expect that they would arrive in 10 days. The journey could be said to be smooth sailing. This was all thanks to a strong teammate like Lin Yi. It seemed that she didn't find the wrong person. Lin Yi nodded and looked around for a while. He didn't find anyone here. This was within his expectations. After all, even if it was a master at the peak of the nascent soul stage, it wouldn't be easy to cross the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. Moreover, in just 5 days, this kind of thing was basically a fantasy. What's next? Do we just go through it? Lin Yi turned around and asked. Of course not. There's an array here. Let me take a look. It should be nearby. Huiyuti said as she looked at the map and began to search back and forth. Array? Lin Yi heard this and frowned. He thought that this place was just a pile of broken walls. He didn't expect there to be an array. Could it be that these boulders in front of him were part of an array? In any case, since it was an array, it couldn't be touched. Lin Yi could only stand aside and watch Huiyuti search back and forth. However, after half a day, Huiyuti's whole body was a little listless, and she still didn't find anything. Lin Yi was speechless. That's right, Huiyuti had been searching carefully. Every step she took seemed to be very careful. However, she had been going back and forth for so long. In fact, the route she took was basically the same. She walked back and forth in the same place. Even if she walked for 10,000 years, what could she do? What kind of hidden array could she find? Seeing that Huiyuti repeated the route 37 times and was about to start the journey 38 times while panting, Lin Yi couldn't stand it anymore. He stood up and stopped her. Are you tired? I'm not tired. Huiyuti panted heavily as she spoke. You're not tired walking, but I'm tired just by looking at you. Lin, he shook his head speechlessly. He immediately said, Can't you show me the map? Why must you go around in circles by yourself? You and I are supposed to keep it a secret. No, absolutely not. Huiyuti immediately blushed. In the beginning, she was indeed on guard against Lin Yi. That was human nature. However, since Lin Yi risked his life to cure her poison and saved her life, she had long forgotten about this precaution. She immediately said angrily, I'm not keeping it a secret. You really can't walk around in this place. Oh, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Didn't I tell you? There's an extremely profound formation here. If you walk around carelessly, even if it's just a single wrong step, it will trigger the heavenly lightning. That's very fatal. Huiyuti said with a solemn expression. Heavenly lightning array? Could it be that some formation master specially set up a formation here? Lin, he couldn't help but be stunned. That's not it. It said that every place where the Thunder Xian vine grows will be protected by a naturally formed formation. If you want to pass through this heavenly lightning array, you absolutely can't force your way through. You must find the eye of the formation and attack the eye of the formation in a very special way to break the formation. Huiyuti finished explaining and added faintly, So I'm doing this for your own good, lest you get struck by the heavenly lightning. All right, but even so, you don't have to go around the same place. When will you be able to do this? Lin, he couldn't help but laugh. He paused and asked, Since you've meticulously collected so much information, don't you know the way to pass through this heavenly lightning array? The formation is naturally formed. Due to the changes in the environment every once in a while, the entire formation will change accordingly. No one can organize a route map. Even if they can, they don't dare to follow it, because it's very likely to be useless. So if you want to pass through this heavenly lightning array safely, you can only rely on yourself to explore it. Of course, you can only start from the edge, Huiyuti said helplessly. I'm going to faint. How long are you going to explore for? Just give it to me. Lin, he held his forehead. His time was very limited. If he wasted a few days on this kind of thing, he wouldn't know what to say. Oh, Huiyuti responded weakly and immediately handed the map in her hand to Lin Yi. Although she didn't think that Lin Yi had any better ideas, she had probed for so long. She was really a little tired. Taking advantage of Lin Yi's shift to rest for a while wasn't a good idea. Lin Yi took the map from Huiyuti and looked at it attentively. Other than the fact that there wasn't a clear way to break through the formation, everything else was clearly marked out. After looking at it for a while, Lin Yi walked in without another word. Huiyuti was just about to sit down and rest. When she saw this scene, she immediately jumped up in shock and rushed over to grab Lin Yi's arm. She shouted, Hey, do you want to die? Because of her panic, Huiyuti almost hugged Lin Yi. Lin Yi felt that his entire arm was trapped in a certain gentle place. This kind of feeling was enough to intoxicate any man. Although Lin Yi wasn't such a pervert, he still subconsciously tightened his muscles. Looking at Lin Yi's strange gaze, Huiyuti realized that the current position was too ambiguous. She screamed and quickly took a few steps back. Her cheeks instantly turned red to the roots of her ears. She didn't dare to look at Lin Yi anymore. Lin Yi smiled silently and immediately continued his previous pace. He just walked toward the Stonehenge, turning left and right from time to time. There was no specific pattern. It gave people the feeling that he was walking around as he pleased. However, the result was that he didn't trigger the Sky Thunder array from beginning to end. After Huiyuti recovered from her shyness, she stared at the scene in front of her with her eyes wide open. Her face was full of disbelief. Could it be that she had guessed wrong? This place was not where the Thunder Xian vine was, and there was no so-called Sky Thunder array at all. It was unlikely, right? This was the information that Master personally got from the West Island's Island Master, Ning Shangling. With their deep friendship, they shouldn't fake this kind of thing. Or was there an error in this map? Huiyuti didn't believe it. She immediately wanted to learn from Lin Yi and walk around. As a result, as soon as she took a step, before her feet completely landed, she heard a deafening crack in the air. A sharp dark blue lightning then struck down. Chapter 4712. Fortunately, she hadn't completely landed on the ground yet. This bolt of lightning almost brushed past her calf and cut a long and narrow hole at her jeans. Fortunately, Huyuti herself wasn't grazed, which was a blessing in disguise. Otherwise, with the power displayed by this lightning, even if she did not die, she would be seriously injured. At worst, she would be knocked unconscious. Heavenly lightning was not a joke. This sudden movement not only shocked Huyuti, but also Lin Yi, who was walking in front of her. He quickly turned around and checked for her. Seeing that she was fine, he was relieved. He looked at her helplessly and said, "Don't you know that there is heavenly lightning here? Why are you walking around?" I just want to try." Huyuti replied weakly with a red face. Then, she looked down at her pants that had been split open. Her face was filled with an indescribable heartache. These were clothes from the secular world. Perhaps this was the only set she would have in this lifetime. Looking at Huyuti's expression, Lin Yi was speechless. He seriously wondered if this girl had a screw loose in her brain. Her first reaction to something like this wasn't to be worried, but to be worried about her pants. Seeing Lin Yi speechlessly turn around and leave, Huyuti hurriedly called out, "Hey, wait for me." She was almost struck by lightning just now. It would be a lie to say that she was not scared at all. Although it was very unbelievable, Huyuti now believed that Lin Yi was not walking around randomly. He really had a way to avoid the hidden heavenly lightning array. Anyway, Lin Yi had given her all kinds of surprises in the past few days. She was already a little used to it. "Stay behind me, just don't wander around." Lin Yi turned back to look at her. But, Huyuti stammered, wanting to say something but hesitating. "But what? Is there other danger here?" Lin Yi was stunned. "Danger? No, I'm talking about my pants." Huyuti's face was red as she pointed at the hole in her pants. A small portion of her smooth and white calf was vaguely exposed, although not much was exposed. She had always been wearing clothes. This feeling was a little strange. "Oh, it's okay. This kind of beggar's pants are the most popular in the secular world. Many people buy jeans and deliberately tear them. People don't even want to look at your small size. At least a dozen of them." Lin Yi smiled. "Really?" Huyuti's eyes widened in disbelief. Why did he have to wear such tattered pants? How could there be such a person in this world? The secular world was really amazing. "Really? You can ask Han Jingjing yourself if you don't believe me. You should know that she came from the common world just like me. Right?" Lin Yi asked. "Oh, okay then." Huyuti nodded her head doubtfully. She knew about Han Jingjing. She wanted to get to know Han Jingjing well when she came to West Island this time. Unfortunately, Han Jingjing was either with Lin Yi or in the lab. She had no chance to see her at all, let alone talk to her. Seeing that Lin Yi was walking around in front of her, and it was as smooth as before, Huyuti quickly followed him. She was curious to see what was going on. However, she blindly followed him for a long time, but she couldn't find anything. Every turn was inexplicable. There was no pattern. "Hey, why do you walk this way?" Huyuti felt like a cat was scratching her heart. She couldn't help but ask. If it weren't for the lesson just now, she couldn't help but want to try it again. Intuition. Lin Yi's answer was concise and to the point. He really couldn't answer her question. Of course, he didn't know whether there was danger ahead, but he had the jade pendant. As long as there was danger ahead, there would be an early warning. When he found the direction where the warning completely disappeared, he would be foolproof. Stingy," Huyuti muttered. She still had a doubtful expression on her face. Of course, she didn't believe that all this was purely based on intuition. But in her knowledge, it seemed that only intuition could explain it. It could only be said that Lin Yi couldn't be treated with common sense. Following behind him was definitely the right choice. The two of them walked back and forth in the Stonehenge for a long time. Several times, they broke into places where there were mines on 3 sides. Even Lin Yi, who had the jade pendant to warn him, couldn't do anything. He could only go back and explore bit by bit. Finally, he succeeded in bypassing them. According to the mark on the map, the Thunder Xian vine was behind the Stonehenge. Lin Yi looked around. In front of him was a medium-sized open space. There were no boulders blocking the way, and it suddenly became clear. He took out the map and compared it with a map. He nodded and said, "It should be here." Yuri didn't say anything. She stared straight at the thing that looked like a memorial in the middle of the open space. She was a little lost in thought. To be honest, she was really a little absent-minded at this time. If it weren't for Lin Yi, a strong teammate, she wouldn't have been able to reach here with her own ability. At least, it wouldn't have been so fast and easy. "What's wrong?" Lin Yi looked at her strangely and urged, "Hurry up and tell us what we should do next. Time is limited. Don't delay anymore." Although Yuri hadn't said how to find the Thunder Xian Vine, Lin Yi could guess that it wasn't so easy to find something like the Thunder Xian Vine. Even if they reached the destination, they probably had to meet some extremely harsh and special conditions. Otherwise, it would be a little too easy to just have the Sky Thunder Matrix as an obstacle. The difficulty obviously didn't match the level of the Thunder Xian Vine. Yuri was stunned for a moment before she reacted. She pointed to the memorial in front of her and said, "This is the 5 Thunder Retribution Memorial. It is the core of the entire Sky Thunder Matrix. Only by attacking the core can we temporarily break the Sky Thunder Matrix and have a chance to find the Thunder Xian Vine. After breaking the Matrix, it will be open for 5 days. After 5 days, the Sky Thunder Matrix will automatically reset, so we have to retreat before that." So simple. When Lin Yi heard this, he immediately mobilized his true chi to launch an attack. He was in a hurry now. He wouldn't hesitate for this kind of thing. In fact, hesitating was useless. Whether he could succeed or not, he would only know after trying. "Hey, wait." Yuri was shocked. She quickly pulled him back and said, "I haven't finished speaking. Don't rush." "What else?" Lin Yi frowned. Chapter 47:13. Normal attacks won't work? Then what do we do? Lin Yi asked curiously, but when he said this, he had a faint guess. Could it be that this was the reason why Yuri specifically asked him, a person with all 5 elements, to be a teammate? If you want to break the Sky Lightning Array, you have to use a very special method to attack the 5 Lightning Tribulation Archway. That is, you have to use martial skills of the 5 basic attributes at the same time. Furthermore, you have to make sure that the power of the 5 attribute martial skills is above the nascent soul stage. A little at, Yuri explained. "So it's like this. I was wondering why you had to find a stranger to be a teammate. So it was for this step." Lin Yi nodded, but then he said, "Then why didn't you find 5 people? It shouldn't be difficult to find nascent soul stage experts with 5 basic attributes in your school. Why do you have to find me? Are you stupid? 5 people have to be divided into 5 parts. How much do I have left?" Yuri rolled her eyes at Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't help but look at her strangely and said, "Even if 5 people divide it equally, you can still get 20%. And I can only get 20% now. What's the difference? Don't tell me you forgot that we agreed on 20% to 80%. Yuri choked and said angrily after a while, "Who knew you were so greedy? Also, my master specifically told me that the search for the Thunder Xian Vine must be kept secret. The fewer people, the better. Otherwise, the more people there are, the better. Otherwise, the more people there are, the more the news will be leaked. What's more troublesome is that if someone has ulterior motives during the process, it will be troublesome. Maybe they will turn against each other and kill each other. I don't want to end up in a tragedy. Even if I only get 20%, 2 people is better than 5. Hee, but now it's only the 2 of us. Aren't you afraid that I won't even give you the 20%? Lin Yi smiled mischievously. Yuri wasn't afraid of him at all. She looked at him provocatively and said, "Whatever. Come on, isn't it just jamming before killing?" Lin Yi looked up at the sky, speechless. This girl wasn't this open at first, but after spending 10 days with her, she was not afraid of him at all. Look at her proud expression when she said this, especially when she was wearing a denim sportswear with holes in it. She was like a delinquent girl in the secular world. A classical beauty had become like this. Wasn't the gap too big? At this moment, Lin Yi felt a sense of guilt. He felt that he was the main culprit. If she hadn't been following him these past few days, Yuri would still be that Ice Mountain Snow Lotus classical beauty. At the very least, she definitely wouldn't be a delinquent in the secular world. Forget it. Let's get back to business. Let's hurry up and break the array. Lin, he had no choice but to change the topic. He cast his gaze at the Five Thunders Memorial Arch. However, this matter is actually a little difficult. Although you have all 5 elements, if you want to break the formation, you need to simultaneously execute all 5 elemental martial techniques in one breath. It's very difficult for ordinary people to do this, but I believe in you. Hui Yudi reminded him. If she hadn't seen Lin Yi's shocking strength before, she wouldn't have so much confidence in Lin Yi. After all, executing 5 elemental martial techniques at the same time was definitely not as easy as it sounded. Even if it wasn't at full strength, as long as it was at the nascent soul stage, it would be enough. However, all the actions had to be completed within one breath. This was basically equivalent to doing 5 things at once. For ordinary people, doing 2 things at once was not easy. Moreover, doing 5 things at once? When Lin Yi heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. If it wasn't for the miraculous encounter when he came out of the 5 poison swamp, he really didn't know what to do after hearing Hui Yudi's words. Although he had learned the 5 elements 8 trigrams palm before, it also possessed the 5 elements at the same time. However, after this martial technique was upgraded to the full circle of heaven stage, it was capped. After that, there was no further advancement. It was still world apart from the nascent soul stage. As for the other martial techniques, no matter how skilled Lin Yi was in executing them, it was very difficult to execute them all in one breath. This girl didn't think clearly before looking for him. Was this something that an ordinary person could do? It was already not bad for an ordinary person to execute one martial technique in one breath. It was impossible for him to execute 2. However, it was also fortunate that Hui Yudi didn't think too much about this. Otherwise, the Thunder Xian Vine would probably have nothing to do with Lin Yi. Looking at Lin Yi's strange expression, Hui Yudi finally reacted. She knew that she had taken it for granted and could only think of a way to remedy the situation. She said this, I also know that it's not very realistic to execute 5 martial techniques at once. However, with your strength, you should be able to execute 4 martial techniques, right? I have metal-type spiritual roots, so I can coordinate with you to execute metal-type martial techniques. As for the other 4, I can only rely on you. Why don't we try it out first? If it's not possible, I have a wood-type spiritual root in my body. I should be able to practice it a little. Forget it, it's not necessary. Lin Yi shook his head and directly blasted a 5 elements murderous chi at the 5 Thunder Tribulation archway in front of him. Hui Yudi was shocked when she saw this. It was too late to stop him. The 5 Thunder Tribulation archway was the core of the array. It didn't care whether you had practiced it before or not. There were only 2 results when attacking it. One was to successfully break the array, and the other was to attract crazy heavenly thunder. There was no third possibility. Hui Yudi was still thinking that this was a difficult task, but with Lin Yi's ability and her cooperation, they'd be able to form a tacit understanding after practicing a few dozen times. Only then would she give a try. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would hit it so casually? Rumble. After the 5 elements murderous chi entered the 5 Thunder Tribulation archway, there was a sudden shaking of heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the sky above was covered with dark clouds. Countless thunder and lightning were hidden in the clouds. It was a terrible scene of the end of the world. Run! Hui Yudi was scared out of her wits. She quickly grabbed Lin Yi's hand and tried to run away. After all, the situation didn't look good. It was obvious that sky lightning was brewing, and it was probably the strongest sky lightning. Lin Yi's feet did not move, but looking at the terrible scene above his head, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Could it be that the 5 elements murderous chi couldn't be used to break the array? Previously, when he heard Hui Yudi's words, he thought that as long as the attack had the attributes of the 5 elements at the same time, it would be fine. As for whether it was 1 martial art skill or 5 martial art skills, it didn't matter. But if the 5 elements murderous chi couldn't be used, didn't it mean that 5 martial art skills were needed? Run! Hui Yudi couldn't pull Lin Yi for a while. and immediately became anxious. Fortunately, she was small. Otherwise, she would probably have carried Lin Yi and escaped. Chapter 47:14. Before she finished speaking, there was a loud crack above her head, and an extremely thick lightning pillar came crashing down. The terrifying might that was produced in that instant caused Hui Yuti's expression to change greatly. Not to mention a nascent soul stage expert, even a profound ascension stage expert would be struck to death. Today, she was really going to die before she could even succeed. However, the next scene made her suddenly stunned. The target of this incomparably terrifying lightning pillar was not her and Lin Yi, but the Five Thunder Retribution Archway. Immediately afterward, in Hui Yuti's stunned gaze, this originally inconspicuous Five Thunder Retribution Archway was not smashed into pieces, but suddenly became dazzling, like a peerless treasure that had been baptized by the heavenly thunder, revealing a shocking lineup. Looks like it should be a success. Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he looked at the Five Thunder Retribution Archway that had changed shape. It was just an archway before, but at the moment, it was covered with all kinds of exquisite and profound runes, and on the edge, there was a circle of light that was neither big nor small, rippling in a very regular pattern. This kind of circle of light felt familiar, a bit like a teleportation array. This seems to have really broken the array, but how is this possible? Hui Yuti looked at this scene and was dumbfounded. She roughly knew what would happen after breaking the array, and the description in the intelligence was almost the same as what was in front of her, but she still turned her head to look at Lin Yi in disbelief and said, "You can really use 5 kinds of martial arts techniques at the same time, and my martial arts technique is a bit special." Lin Yi explained vaguely, and then said, "Let's go." "Oh, it seems that I really found the right person." Hui Yuti rejoiced. If Lin Yi didn't have this trick up his sleeve, this would be a lot of trouble. Maybe they wouldn't even be able to enter the door in the end. But now, everything was solved. According to the information she received, as long as they could break this sky thunder formation, they would be able to escape. After that, there were no more obstacles. Without hesitation, the two of them immediately walked to the aperture at the edge of the Five Thunder Retribution Archway. As expected, this aperture was a small teleportation array. However, it was different from the teleportation arrays that they had seen before. The other teleportation arrays required a certain amount of time to activate, but this one was different. As soon as Lin Yi and Hui Yuti walked into the aperture, the scene in front of them immediately changed. Rather than saying it was a teleportation, it was more like pushing open Doraemon's door of anything. Pushing open the door would bring one to another place. The scene unfolding in front of the two of them. It was a narrow, one-way passage. Above them was a single line of sky. Thunderclouds covered the sky, causing people to feel intimidated. At first, Lin wanted to go up and explore, but when he saw the thick thunderclouds, he immediately gave up on the idea. If he went up rashly, he would definitely be struck to death by lightning. On the other hand, Hui Yuti heaved a sigh of relief. Although that was what the intelligence had said, she was still afraid that an unexpected crisis would occur at this time. However, from the looks of it, there was no danger for the time being. "Let's go." As Lin Yi spoke, he took the lead and walked forward. There was only a one-way passage in front of them. There was no other choice. Anyway, he had the jade pendant as an early warning. Even if there was danger, he could react in advance. After turning 3 corners, Lin Yi suddenly stopped in his tracks. Hui Yuti, who was behind, was caught off guard and bumped into him. She asked, "What's wrong?" "There's no way out." Lin Yi's voice at the moment had some inexplicable excitement. "There's no way out?" Hui Yuti was stunned. Her head popped out from behind Lin Yi's back. Then, she was also stunned. Her eyes flashed with incomparable excitement. She murmured excitedly, "Thunder Xian Vine? This is the Thunder Xian Vine." There was indeed no way out in front of the two of them. There was only an extremely steep cliff. However, on this cliff, there were a few strangely shaped vines. Apart from being thicker than ordinary vines, the most distinctive feature was the electric arcs that flashed on its surface from time to time. Without a doubt, this was the Thunder Xian Vine. After a slight count, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. There was actually a total of 5 Thunder Xian vines in this place. However, 2 of them had been chopped off at some point, leaving only 2 sections of roots of different lengths. As for the remaining 3 Thunder Xian vines, their growth was different. One of them was already very mature. Not only was the vine much thicker than the others, even the electric arcs that flashed on it from time to time were stronger and more frequent. As for the remaining 2 Thunder Xian vines, they were relatively more tender. One of them was already showing signs of maturing, while the other had just bloomed. Even the vine had not officially spread out yet. It turns out that there are 5 Thunder Mystic Rottans alternating with each other. Lin Yi immediately understood. From the looks of it, these 5 Thunder Xian vines' growth cycles were staggered. In other words, it was basically guaranteed that one Thunder Xian vine would mature in every trial. It seemed that these Thunder Xian Rottans were not natural and wild, but had been carefully arranged by someone. As for the purpose, it was mostly to ensure the value of the West Island trial. After all, the Thunder Xian Rottan was a treasure of heaven and earth. If there was a break in the supply, the West Island trial would not be as famous as it was now on the 5 Heaven Stage Islands. It's this one, quickly chop it down. Hui Yudi pointed at the fully matured Thunder Xian vine and said excitedly, eager to give it a try. Chop it off. Lin Yi couldn't help but be taken aback when he heard this. He asked curiously, why do we have to chop it off? Isn't it good to take it back with the roots? I can take it back and plant it, right? Don't you know the customary rules of the cultivation world? Hui Yudi glanced at Lin Yi. Seeing that he really didn't know what was going on, she explained, always leave a way out, especially in the face of heaven and earth treasures. If there are no special circumstances, you must never cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. After all, it is your fate that you encountered it, but you can't deprive other cultivators of the good fortune that nature has given. You must know that if you do too much, your fate will inevitably end early. Oh, I've learned. Lin Yi nodded humbly. He really didn't expect that there would be such a customary rule on the Heaven Stage Island. It seemed that in addition to mutual deception in the cultivation world, it was not necessarily that there were no rules. Greed was human nature. If there were no such rules, the heaven and earth treasures on the Heaven Stage Island would have been dug clean, leaving nothing behind. Leaving a way out for others was equivalent to leaving a way out for oneself. However, since this rule was customary, it meant that it was not mandatory. Except for disciples like Hui Yudi, who came from East Continent College, or famous sects who had this kind of self-awareness, others might not be so obedient. Chapter 47:15. Especially in a chaotic place like the South Sea, there would never be such a well-behaved cultivator. At least, Lin Yi had never seen such a cultivator. Not only that, in fact, it's useless even if you dig it back. It can't grow at all, Hui Yudi continued. Why? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. Because the Thunder Xian Rottan has very unique and harsh requirements for its growth environment. It must be tempered by thunder and lightning to grow continuously. Except for the unique environment in this place, where it can often be tempered by thunder and lightning, no other place has such conditions, Hui Yudi said with a smile. Well, that's a problem. Lin Yi nodded. In fact, this could be seen from the name of the Thunder Xian Rottan and the electric arcs on its vines. There were thick thunderclouds above their heads, and it couldn't be found in other places. He had planned to put the Thunder Xian Rottan into the space of the Jade Pendant, but after thinking about it, he decided to give up. It was not purely because the Thunder Xian Rottan needed thunder and lightning. Lin Yi could barely meet this condition. He now had the thunder attribute, and it was not difficult to create a little thunder and lightning in the space of the Jade Pendant from time to time. The key was that this was West Island, which was the territory of Ning Xuefei's family. Lin Yi could cheat anyone but Ning Xuefei. Anyway, he could get a lot of Thunder Xian Rottan this time, and it didn't matter if it was not rooted or not. The two immediately began to cut the Thunder Xian Rottan excitedly. Because of the flashing electric arcs on it, it was actually a technical job. If they were not careful, they would get hurt. But Huiyuti had already prepared for it. She brought special tools in her backpack. They could finally come in handy at this time. While Lin Yi and Huiyuti were cutting the Thunder Xianrot Tan, two familiar old faces suddenly appeared in the Stonehenge outside. They were Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming. In this West Island trial, their task was not only to destroy Lin Yi's plan, but also to have a very important task, which was the Thunder Xianrot Tan. They also had the intelligence information that Huiyuti had. So it was not surprising that they appeared here, but they didn't have Lin Yi's jade pendant to warn them. It wasn't easy to pass through the stone array. Although the sky lightning array had been destroyed by Lin Yi in name, he had only opened up the passageway inside. The sky lightning array on the outside was still operating. One wrong step, and there would be a crack of lightning. However, the two of them had come prepared. At this point, they were not helpless. At this moment, Kong Mingming was wearing an awe-inspiring AI armor. He was holding something that looked like a detector in his hand, and it seemed to be connected to the intelligent armor. With this thing, Kong Mingming was able to miraculously dodge the lightning. Needless to say, the technological level of the center was not to be underestimated. The practicality of this kind of high-tech gadget was almost as good as Lin Yi's jade pendant warning. There would always be a corresponding sign before lightning strikes. Even the heavenly lightning array here was no exception. Therefore, he had to rely on the detector in his hand. That was why Kong Mingming was able to detect the heavenly thunder in advance. However, this alone was not enough for him to avoid the heavenly thunder. This was because although the detector was extremely sensitive, it could only predict the lightning by half a second. The reaction time was far less than Lin Yi's jade pendant warning. However, the AI armor on Kong Mingming made up for this shortcoming. This high-tech crystal was connected to the detector, and it could even automatically dodge. In other words, before Kong Mingming could react, it had already automatically dodged. From a certain point of view, this gadget's technological content was much higher than the powerful laser cannon. Haha, young Master Su, what do you think? The things in the secular world are still very powerful, right? This thing is much more powerful than any divine weapon. Kong Mingming laughed proudly as he led the way. Not bad indeed. Su Lingqiong nodded sincerely. Along the way, Kong Mingming's various performances had completely changed his view of the secular world. At least these high-tech gadgets in the secular world were indeed powerful. Looking at Kong Mingming's swagger, Su Lingqiong was even a little envious. He wanted to grab it and wear it himself. The two of them arrived at the Five Thunders archway very quickly. Kong Mingming looked at the glowing archway in front of him and rubbed his eyes. He said in amazement, "The place that produces the Thunder Mystic Rot Tan is really powerful. Even the array is so cool. Young Master Su, it seems that we can only use some strength to break the door, right?" "That's right. The intelligence said that we need to concentrate all 5 elements to attack at the same time. We can't do it with just the 2 of us. However, can you break the door by force?" Su Lingqiong asked doubtfully. "I don't know. Let's give it a try first. Anyway, the higher-ups told us to do it. They can't blame us if anything goes wrong." Kong Mingming rubbed his hands as he spoke. He immediately set up the laser cannon and aimed at the Five Thunders archway. No matter what kind of bullshit request it had, it would be destroyed with a blast. Kong Mingming licked his lips eagerly. However, when he was about to fire, Su Lingqiong suddenly stopped him. "Wait a minute. This archway is a little strange. Why do I feel that it has been opened by someone?" "Huh? Really?" Kong Mingming was surprised. He was just showing off with the help of the super high-tech equipment. In terms of eyesight, he was far worse than Su Lingqiong. "It should be right. Go and have a try." Su Lingqiong immediately ordered. In the past, Kong Ming would definitely find a way to shirk the responsibility of such a guinea pig mission. However, he was so confident now that he strode over without saying anything. As soon as he walked into the circle of light of the Five Thunders archway, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. Sure enough, Su Lingqiong hurriedly followed him. Although Kong Mingming was the main force of this mission, he would not let Kong Mingming have the upper hand when it came to the Thunder Xianrot Tan. The sudden intrusion of Kong Mingming and Su Lingchong immediately alerted Lin Yi. His divine sense had been carefully perceiving all the movements in the surroundings. He could not detect them when they were outside, but once they entered the archway, it was impossible for them to escape his perception. Someone is coming. Wait for my signal. Lin Yi hurriedly reminded Huiyuti. Then he quickly put the Thunder Xian Rot Tan into the space of the Jade Pendant. Chapter 47:16. As soon as Lin Yi put away the Thunder Xian Rot Tan, Kong Ming and Su Lingchong rushed in the next moment. Both sides couldn't help but be a little stunned for a moment. They subconsciously took 2 steps back and confronted each other. We are really enemies on a narrow road. I was wondering who was so insensible and dared to get here first. It turns out to be you, the pretentious leader. Kong Ming reacted and immediately jumped. At the same time, he couldn't help but aim the laser cannon at Lin Yi. He couldn't wait to find a chance to shoot this guy. Not only Kong Ming and Su Lingchong were shocked, but in fact, Lin Yi and Huiyuti were even more shocked than them at the moment. Although they were aware of it in advance, Lin Yi's shock at the moment was not faked. He really didn't expect these 2 guys to come here. Glancing at the laser cannon in Kong Ming's hand without a trace, Lin Yi had quietly prepared to make a move. With the strength of the 2 opponents, there was no threat to them, but this laser cannon could easily kill a nascent soul stage expert, so they had to be on guard. In particular, the other party also occupied the position of the exit. Once they fought, the 2 of them were in a very disadvantageous position. It was simply like a turtle in a jar. If they want to make a move, they must make the first move. At the same time, Huiyuti was also secretly holding her breath. It was basically impossible to be kind when encountering the 2 of them at this time. Although she was a woman, if they really wanted to fight, Huiyuti, would definitely be the one to make the first move. Compared to Kong Ming, who wanted to take the opportunity to find trouble with Lin Yi, Su Lingchong's focus was on the Thunder Xian Rot Tan. After glancing at the situation on the cliff, he couldn't help but frown and said, "Hey, why are these Thunder Xian Rot Tan not too mature yet? Could it be that the mature ones have been cut off by you? Are you blind? If you cut it off, then find it and see. Did you eat it? The 2 of us have just arrived here," Lin Yi said in an unfriendly tone. Su Lingchong and Kong Ming looked at each other and confirmed that Lin Yi and Huiyuti didn't have any Thunder Xian Rot Tan on their bodies. After all, if this thing was really chopped off, its volume wouldn't be small. He definitely couldn't hide it on his body. "Are the 2 of you also here for the Thunder Xian Rot Tan?" Su Lingchong asked again. "Nonsense. If you don't come here for the Thunder Xian Rot Tan, do you think you're here for the scenery?" There was an obvious smell of gunpowder in Lin Yi's tone, giving people the feeling that he had suffered a setback and was sulking. He coldly snorted and said, "We went through so much trouble to come here, but who knew that it was not ripe yet? We came here for nothing and can only go back empty-handed. What bad luck." As he spoke, he gave Huiyuti a look. Lin Yi took the lead and walked out with an unfriendly expression. Su Lingchong and Kong Ming didn't stop them. Anyway, the other party didn't get the Thunder Xian Rot Tan, so it didn't matter to let them go. They tactfully made way for them. Huiyuti anxiously followed Lin Yi's footsteps. As a result, they passed smoothly. She couldn't help but admire Lin Yi's calmness and resourcefulness. He obviously had a whole Thunder Xian Rot Tan, but he could still deceive the other party. His acting was really superb. He let Lin Yi and Huiyuti pass. Kong Ming originally wanted to take the opportunity to find trouble, but since Lin Yi was so sensible and took the initiative to give way, and the higher-ups said that they couldn't take the initiative to provoke the other party, he simply couldn't be bothered. He turned to Su Lingchong and said, "Young Master Su, since that's the case, let's go dig it ourselves. Don't bother with this pretentious leader. These 2 Thunder Xian Rot Tans haven't matured yet. It's useless to take them back." Su Lingchong frowned and shook his head. "That's true." Kong Ming thought for a moment. Then he suggested, "Why don't we uproot them and take them back? Anyway, it's the higher-ups' order. Let them solve this matter by themselves. We've done our best." Uproot them? That's not good, is it? Su Lingchong couldn't help but hesitate. Although he wasn't a good person by nature, he was, after all, a disciple cultivated by the three pavilions of the North Island. The imperceptible influence of the famous sex influenced his behavior. At least, he knew the unspoken rule of leaving a way out for everything. But we can't go back empty-handed like this pretentious leader, can we? Although these two thunder mystic vines haven't matured yet, we're doing our duty by cutting them down and bringing them back. The higher-ups won't be able to say anything. If we leave like this and the higher-ups blame us, we won't be able to handle it. Kong Xiaoming advised. At the thought of being punished by the mysterious man, Su Lingqiong couldn't help but shiver. He had to nod and agree. Well, let's do as you say. After that, they were ready to dig up the two immature Thunder Xianrot Tans. Lin Yi was about to reach the exit. After noticing their movement, he was shocked. If it was something else, he really didn't want to get involved. But this involved the interests of the whole West Island, especially Ning Shuifei's interests. He couldn't just stand by. If it weren't for this consideration, Lin Yi would have transplanted all these Thunder Xianrot Tans into the space of his jade pendant. How could Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming have a chance? Stop! Lin Yi suddenly appeared behind them, which really startled Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming. They didn't expect that this guy would come back. Su Lingqiong suddenly acted as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Although he was a master of the gathering vitality stage now, he had suffered too many losses from Lin Yi before, so he was a little scared from the bottom of his heart. If he faced Lin Yi alone, his first reaction would definitely be to turn around and run away. But this time it was different. He had Kong Mingming with a full suit of high-tech equipment, whose combat capability was comparable to that of a master of the mysterious ascending stage. Naturally, he wouldn't be scared by Lin Yi. What? Pretentious leader, you won't tell me that you regret now and want to get a share of the profits, will you? Let me tell you, no way. Kong Mingming said arrogantly. At the same time, he pointed at Lin Yi with a laser cannon, his face full of disdain. Su Lingqiong stepped back with fear on his face. Kong Mingming was a ready-made human shield, and he wasn't afraid of Lin Yi's surprise attack at all. But Su Lingqiong couldn't do that. If they really fought, he might be easily killed in a second, which would be a great injustice. You don't even let go of the immature Thunder Xianrot Tans, and you want to dig up the roots. Anyway, you're the disciples of the three pavilions of the North Island. You have no bottom line. Hui Yudi, who appeared behind Lin Yi, looked at the two angrily. Chapter 47:17. Humph! The North Island and the West Island have always been on good terms. You two treat the treasure of heaven and earth of the West Island like this. If the news gets out, how do you think the leaders of the North Island will deal with you? Maybe it will directly alarm Pavilion Master Shangwan. Are you sure you can withstand it with your Ultraman equipment? Lin Yi sneered. Sent, Kong Xiaoming and Su Lingqiong's expressions changed when they heard that. Although the other party's words were frightening, it wasn't impossible. If they were to accuse them of deliberately destroying the relationship between the two islands, then they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Although Kong Mingming's super high-tech equipment was awesome and unscrupulous, he did not dare to face the anger of super big shot like Shanghai Tianhua. Kong Mingming was speechless for a moment, but Su Lingqiong, who was hiding behind him, said, "Are you kidding? The treasure of heaven and earth belongs to those who are capable. Since we are allowed to participate in the trial of the West Island this time, as long as we have the ability, the Thunder Xianrot Tan will naturally be at our disposal." The rules of the trial didn't say that we can't dig the Thunder Xianrot Tan, right? Yes, since the rules of the trial didn't say it, it means that it is tacitly allowed, and no one can find fault with it. Kong Mingming quickly echoed and sneered at Lin Yi and Su Lingqiong. You're stupid, but you blame others. You're also acting righteously. Tut-tut, the pretentious leader is really the pretentious leader. You are really twisting words and forcing logic. How could the three pavilions of the North Island cultivate such rogue disciples like you? You have done this kind of thing, and you are still proud. You are so shameless. Hui Yudi said angrily. When we get the Thunder Xianrot Tan, I'll be the winner of this trial. When I marry the princess of the West Island, you will know whether I am shameless or not." Kong Ming laughed. Now he somewhat looked down on Huiyuti. The Thunder Xianrat Tan, a rare treasure of heaven and earth, was in his hands. Even if others tried their best to grab a basket of treasures of heaven and earth, it would be useless. Its value was far less than a small piece here. In other words, Princess Ning Shuifei of the West Island was already in his pocket, just like the Thunder Xianrat Tan. "Don't worry. You won't be able to get the Thunder Profound Rattan." Lin Yi's expression turned cold. Before he finished his words, he raised his hand and released a murderous aura of the 5 elements. Previously, he was not ready to fight to the death with Kong Ming, who was fully equipped with high-tech equipment, so it was okay for him to take a step back. But now that Kong Ming had made it clear that he wanted to lay his hands on Ning Shuifei, he had touched his reverse scale, and he had to kill him. Seeing that Lin Yi had suddenly launched an attack and hearing the vague yet breathtaking dragon roar, Kong Ming's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Although he wasn't afraid of Lin Yi now, the power he had accumulated for a long time was already deeply ingrained in his heart. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't flustered at all. As for Su Lingqiong, he was terrified to the point that he simply hid behind Kong Ming. The lesson of Ma Daoqiang, the intermediate stage nascent soul realm cultivator, was still vivid in his mind. Even if his true strength was slightly stronger than Ma Daoqiang, it was still limited, and he knew that he was absolutely not a match for a freak like Lin Yi. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the 5 elements murderous chi had already blasted onto Kong Ming's chest, and the aftermath that escaped caused the surrounding area to shake. It could be seen how powerful it was. Huiyuti was overjoyed seeing this. She didn't have a good impression of a hateful guy like Kong Ming, especially when he did things without a bottom line. She simply hated him to the extreme and couldn't wait for Lin Yi to kill him. From now on, there would be one less bastard in the world. However, in the next moment, Huiyuti's eyes suddenly widened. She had already seen this move of Lin Yi's 5 elements murderous chi several times on the road, especially the scene where he casually slapped Scarface away. It left a deep impression on her. After all, Scarface was a profound ascending stage expert. Using such a powerful killing move to deal with Kong Ming, Huiyuti originally thought that it would be a piece of cake. However, she didn't expect that after Lin Yi's 5 elements murderous chi hit him head-on, Kong Ming only snorted and took half a step back. That was all. Not to mention Huiyuti, even Lin Yi himself couldn't help but be shocked by this result. The 5 elements murderous chi was his current strongest killing move. It was a powerful trump card that could instantly kill a profound ascending stage expert, but Kong Ming was hit head-on in the chest, and there was no damage at all. How is this possible? Haha, pretentious boss, you're only a so-so. Kong Ming was a little panicked at first, but now he suddenly became arrogant. "I'm not afraid to tell you. This is the latest super high-tech intelligent armor that I developed. Even a full blow from a profound ascending stage expert can be easily defended. You're just a mere peak early nascent soul stage expert." When Lin Yi heard this, he couldn't help but frown. He had already overestimated Kong Ming's equipment, or else he wouldn't have chosen to take the initiative to retreat in the beginning. However, he thought that the thing he should be most afraid of was the laser cannon. But he didn't expect the opponent's intelligent armor to be even more difficult to deal with. Even the strongest 5 elements murderous chi couldn't be used. Didn't this mean that the opponent was in an invincible position? Since he couldn't hit the body, he could only hit the head. At least the head was not protected by the armor. Lin Yi didn't hesitate to attack again. However, before he could condense the 5 elements murderous chi again, the intelligent armor on Kong Ming's body suddenly moved and actually covered his head tightly. This time, there was no blind spot, and he had completely become Ultraman. For a moment, Lin Yi was a little helpless. In this situation, if he didn't find a way to break this intelligent armor, he couldn't fight at all. But if he just retreated like this, then the 2 Thunder Xianrat Tans would definitely fall into the hands of the opponent. It would not only cause a huge loss to West Island, but the key was that it was related to Ning Shuifei's marriage. Lin, he couldn't let a bastard like Kong Ming Ming have the last laugh, could he? Although he had a mature Thunder Xianrot Tan, if Kong Ming Ming dug out two of them, the value would be more than his. Haha, now you have no choice, right? I haven't done anything yet. Come on, I'll let you, the pretentious leader, taste the power of my laser cannon. Kong Ming Ming laughed and immediately set up the laser cannon. Before his voice died away, he directly shot the laser cannon at Lin Yi. Under normal circumstances, this kind of instantaneous weapon couldn't be dodged at all. It would definitely hit where it was pointed, and there was almost no time difference in between. No matter how strong and fast one was, it was nonsense. Could it be faster than the speed of light? Fortunately, Lin Yi had the warning of the Jade Pendant, and he made a dodging movement in advance before Kong Ming Ming made his move, so he could barely escape. The laser cannon missed the target, and the laser cannon actually blasted a bottomless pit on the cliff here. Its power was so amazing that it was appalling. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little frightened. Even the full blow of a master at the full completion of Mysterious Ascension couldn't be so fucking terrifying. Chapter 47:18. However, it was clear that this kid did not intend to let Lin Yi go so easily. Kong Ming Ming immediately followed up with another shot. Usually, he could not take the initiative to provoke Lin Yi, but this time, Lin Yi made the first move. Kong Ming 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 had no qualms about fighting back. How could he let go of such an opportunity so easily? With O, Lin Yi saw that the situation was not good. He quickly retreated with Huiyuti and temporarily escaped from the opponent's line of sight by using the cliff as a cover. This was the only way. The super high-tech equipment of the smart armor and the laser cannon was too fierce. Even if his strength was 100 times higher than Kong Ming Ming's, he could not do anything to the opponent for a while. If Lin Yi was alone, it would be fine. With the warning of the Jade Pendant, he could at least deal with the opponent head-on. He might have a chance to find the opponent's weakness. However, he had to consider Huiyuti's safety now. Even if Kong Ming Ming did not deliberately target her, it was very easy for him to accidentally hurt her. The laser cannon was something that could kill a person. After a few turns, Lin Yi and Huiyuti had already escaped to the exit. Seeing that Kong Ming Ming did not chase after them, they stopped and looked at each other. What should we do? Are we just going to let them dig up the Thunder Mystic Vine? Huiyuti looked at Lin Yi in shock. The scene just now had made her understand the horror of the opponent's equipment. Even Lin Yi could not do anything to the opponent, let alone her. Basically, even if Kong Ming Ming stood in front of her and let her hit him, she would not be able to do anything. Lin Yi shook his head unwillingly, but he could not think of a solution at the moment. He believed that even the super high-tech equipment must have a weakness. But how could he find this weakness? That was an undeniable problem. At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly felt his heart tighten. The warning of the Jade Pendant in his mind was ringing wildly. Without saying anything, he quickly pushed Huiyuti to the ground. Ah! Huiyuti let out a cry of surprise. Her face was completely red as she looked at Lin Yi, who was pressing down on her. She could feel his manly aura so close to her, and her face was so red that it seemed as if it was about to drip blood. She couldn't help but say angrily, "What are you doing? Do you want to kill him first?" Pooh! Lin Yi was originally quite nervous, but when he heard her words, he immediately burst into laughter. How did this girl's brain work? Even at this time, she could think of killing him first. Lin Yi didn't say anything, but silently pointed upwards. Huiyuti looked in the direction of his finger and was instantly shocked. There was a huge hole in the place where they had just been standing. It was obvious that Kong Ming Ming hadn't given up and had blindly fired in the direction of the exit. The power of this laser cannon was terrifying. It directly pierced through the 4 cliffs in the middle of the road. If it weren't for Lin Yi's timely rescue, both of them would have been dead by now. Perhaps they would have already gone to the Yellow Springs together. Let's get out of here first. Lin Yi pulled Huiyuti up and looked at Kong Ming Ming, who was inside the big hole from afar. He immediately flashed out of the 5 Thunder Tribulation archway. It was too dangerous to continue staying inside. This laser cannon was simply unreasonable. Ah, the pretentious old man has become a coward. This time, I must let you suffer. Kong Ming Ming laughed complacently. Seeing Lin Yi and Hui Yuhao fleeing in panic, he immediately set off to chase and kill them. He didn't intend to let Lin Yi go so easily. Even if he couldn't kill him, he had to make a hole in Lin Yi's body to collect some interest. Forget it. Business is more important. Let's dig out the Thunder Xian vine first. Su Lingchong tried to stop him. Although he also hated Lin Yi to the core, he still remembered the mysterious man's warning. If Kong Ming Ming really killed Lin Yi with one shot, Su Lingchong would be afraid. If the higher-ups blamed him, it would be impossible for him to stay out of it. He did not want to complicate matters. All right then, I'll let that pretentious old man go for now. I'll deal with him after we get out of here. Kong Ming Ming reluctantly put away the laser cannon and began to dig out the Thunder Xian vine with his eyes shining. As long as he got these two Thunder Xian vines, he not only completed the task assigned by the higher-ups, but also could get Ning Shuafei, the princess of West Island, into his pocket at the same time. This kind of beautiful thing, killing two birds with one stone, would only appear in a dream. Inside, the two people were digging the Thunder Xian vine in full swing. Outside, Lin Yi and Hui Yudi were looking at the 5 Thunder Tribulation archway in front of them and were at a loss of what to do. Not to mention Hui Yudi, Lin Yi was definitely not willing to retreat like this. But he could do nothing about Kong Ming Ming's super high-tech equipment. It was really a dilemma. You stay outside and find a place to hide first. I'll go in and try again. Lin Yi thought for a while and said, but he could still deal with the other party for a while by himself. No matter what, even if it was for Ning Shuafei, he could not retreat like this. Are you sure? Hui Yudi quickly pulled him and asked. To be honest, I'm really not sure, but I have to try anyway. If I don't try, I'll never find a way. If I try, I may have a chance. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Well, if you want to go, I'll go with you. Hui Yudi said with a firm look. Why do you want to go with me? Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. Then he seemed to think of something. He took out a piece of Thunder Xian vine from the space of the jade pendant and handed it to her. Although it was a rough estimate, it was at least a lot more than the 20% that was previously agreed. What are you doing? Hui Yudi was also stunned. You came here for the Thunder Xian vine. Now that your purpose has been achieved, you don't have to continue to follow me and take risks. Lin Yi looked at her and said, if they went in again, it would be inevitable to fight hard. It was okay for him, but for Hui Yudi, it was a dangerous situation. He did not want this little girl to be implicated because of him. Aren't you also going for the Thunder Xian vine? Then why do you want to go back and take risks? Hui Yudi pouted. I'm going back for Ning Shuafei. Don't tell me you also want to fight for Ning Shuafei. You are a woman. Lin Yi heard her words and laughed. I don't care. If I want to leave this place, I can leave. If I want to stay, I can stay. If you want to go in, I want to go in too. Hui Yudi stubbornly said. Lin Yi suddenly felt a headache when he heard this. Ever since this little girl put on the denim suit, she was more and more developing into a delinquent girl in the secular world. Even the tone and manner of speaking were the same. How could this be endured? Seeing that Hui Yudi refused to let him go in alone, Lin Yi felt helpless and could not help but feel a little touched. After getting along for 10 days, the two of them could be regarded as real friends. Otherwise, if it was just a simple union of interests, they would have parted ways long ago. Why would she insist on staying to accompany him? After all, this was risking her life. Chapter 4719. In order to deal with Kong Ming Ming's super high-tech equipment, Han Jingjing specially gave him a mobile phone before he set off. Just now, he was in a hurry and forgot about it. Ignoring Hui Yudi's surprised gaze, Lin Yi immediately took out the mobile phone. As soon as he turned it on, he found that this place was a little better than expected. Although the signal was very weak, he could still receive a little bit. It could be seen that this place should not be too far from the mainland of West Island. Otherwise, the small base station set up by Han Jingjing could not reach it at all. There was only one number saved on the mobile phone. Without thinking, he knew that it must be Ning Shuafei's. Looking at the 5 major heaven stage islands, Only she and Han Jingjing could use mobile phones to make calls. Brother Lin. Han Jingjing's excited voice soon came from the other end of the phone. Obviously, Ning Shuifei's mobile phone had been temporarily taken care of by her in order to provide off-site support to Lin Yi at any time. She had been carrying it with her for so many days, waiting for this moment. Jingjing, I'm in a little trouble now. Help me think of a way to solve it. Lin Yi had no time for small talk and said directly, I'm fighting with Kong Ming Ming, but his armor is like a tortoise shell. Even if I use my strongest martial arts to attack, it is useless. Even his head is covered tightly. It seems that there is no blind spot. Well, Han Jingjing could not help but fall into deep thought. After a while, she said, It's really difficult to deal with it. If only I were here, maybe I could find a solution. But it can't be done in a short time. Since the defense of his armor is so strong, I'm afraid that normal attack methods are not realistic, unless... Unless what? Lin Yi asked quickly. Use electric shock. Han Jingjing's voice was loud. Electric shock? Why didn't I think of it? Lin Yi was stunned at first, and then his eyes lit up. To deal with Kong Ming Ming's metal armor, which was like a tortoise shell, electric shock was definitely the most effective and fatal method. No matter how strong his defense was, it would be useless. Once the electricity was activated, he would be able to ignore it. Not only would this metal armor not be able to save Kong Ming Ming, but it would also be the talisman that would hasten his death. Coincidentally, a few days ago, even if Lin Yi wanted to use electric shock on Kong Ming Ming, it would have been impossible. That was because he didn't have any means of electrocution. However, things were different now. He had mastered the power of lightning from the inheritance of the giant electric eel. Even though its power was far inferior to the 5 elements killing aura, it was more than enough to deal with Kong Ming Ming. Lin Yi was so excited that he was about to hang up when Han Jingjing spoke up. Lin Yi bro, don't get too excited just yet. The electrocution was just a possible countermeasure. Let's not talk about whether or not it'll work, but I doubt that a high-tech armor like his wouldn't be able to do that. Maybe it's not afraid of electric shock at all. How is that possible? Lin Yi was shocked. After all, this loophole is too obvious. If I were the designer of this armor, I would definitely think of a way to solve this problem. Even if I can't make it completely immune to electric shock, I would at least try to make up for this weakness. I dare say that this armor has an insulating layer. Normal electric shock is definitely useless, Han Jingjing said with certainty. Then what should we do? Doesn't that mean we're really helpless? Lin Yi felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. His little bit of excitement was instantly extinguished. Han Jingjing was an expert in this area. Since she dared to come to such a conclusion, it meant that it couldn't be wrong. Thinking about it carefully, whether it was the AI armor or the laser cannon, they were both high-tech products that could almost represent the highest level of technology in the mortal world. If there was such an obvious loophole in these things, it would be child's play. Han Jingjing thought for a moment and said, Because I can't get first-hand information, I can't think of any other way. For the time being, it seems that electric shock is the most effective way to deal with it. However, it can't be a simple electric shock. We have to do some preparatory work first. Oh, what preparatory work? Lin Yi asked hurriedly. And so. Han Jingjing explained it over the phone, and Lin Yi calmed down. He couldn't wait to hang up the phone and get ready to test it on Kong Ming Ming. What is this thing? Is it a technological product from the mortal world? Seeing that Lin Yi seemed to be prepared, Hui Yudi asked. She saw that Lin Yi was talking to this thing. She saw that there was a vague female voice coming from it. It sounded like it was Han Jingjing. This was too magical. At this moment, her eyes were filled with little stars of curiosity. Her heart felt like it was being scratched by hundreds of claws. She couldn't wait to snatch it and study it. Oh, this is a mobile phone, a very common communication tool in the mortal world. You can study it later when you are free. Lin Yi threw the mobile phone to Hui Yudi. After taking a deep breath, he carefully re-entered the light circle of the 5 Thunder Tribulation Archway. Seeing that Lin Yi went in, Hui Yudi naturally didn't want to be left behind. She immediately put the mobile phone and the Thunder Shin Vine that Lin Yi gave her in her backpack and followed him in tiptoeing. The scene in front of them changed. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi reappeared in the narrow passage one after another. Standing at the exit, they could see the situation inside from afar. At this time, Kong Ming and Su Lingqiong were digging the Thunder Xian vine in full swing. Each of them had one Thunder Xian vine, and they were very happy. Shoo! Lin Yi made a shushing gesture to Hui Yudi, and then his figure flashed. In order to gain the upper hand before the other party noticed and reacted, he didn't hesitate to use the extreme butterfly micro-steps. His whole person was like a ghost, approaching the two of them at the fastest speed. Hui Yudi looked at this scene nervously, and her heart was in her throat. She didn't know what method Han Jingjing and Lin Yi had discussed just now. She only knew that if Lin Yi didn't succeed this time, then the two of them would really be in danger. Relying on the intelligent armor and the laser cannon, Kong Ming was now an invincible humanoid monster. Unfortunately, this was not his true strength. Once it involved the field where these two equipment couldn't be used, he was immediately beaten back to his original state, such as divine sense perception, until Lin Yi appeared behind him silently. Kong Ming still didn't realize it. Instead, Su Lingqiong, who was next to him, reacted first. Without saying anything, he fled to the side and shouted in horror, "Lin Yi." Chapter 47:20. Looking at the helmet wrapped around Kong Ming's head, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel pity. He didn't expect this guy to be so cautious. Even at this time, he still wrapped the helmet. Otherwise, he would have been killed instantly. However, it was just a little pity. Lin Yi wasn't stupid enough to place his hopes on the opponent's carelessness. According to the plan he discussed with Han Jingjing, even if the opponent didn't reveal any flaws, he could still find a way to create one. The first reaction of Kong Ming when he saw Lin Yi was to shoot him with a cannon. Unfortunately, before he could turn the muzzle of the laser cannon, Lin Yi had already made the first move. For a moment, the temperature in the narrow canyon rose sharply. A soaring flame instantly swept in all directions, followed by a series of continuous rumbling sounds. It was the raging flame Thousand Burst Fist. This killing move originated from the raging Sand Thousand Burst Fist. Its power was strong enough to deal with a nascent soul-perfected expert. Su Lingqiong, who was hiding far away, was already a little overwhelmed by the aftermath. Unfortunately, Kong Ming stood in the center of the explosion and didn't move an inch. Even the murderous aura of the five elements just now couldn't do anything to him. Naturally, the raging flame Thousand Burst Fist had no effect on him. What kind of bullshit move is this? The momentum looks quite scary. Unfortunately, it's not enough to tickle me. The only use for it is that I don't have to buy fireworks and firecrackers during Chinese New Year. Kong Ming laughed proudly. At this moment, Lin Yi was completely a clown in his eyes. He actually dared to sneak back to attack. What's the use of that? What Kong Ming wanted to do the most now was to point the laser cannon at Lin Yi and make this pretentious leader kneel on the ground and sing Conquer to him. At this moment, the two of them were very close. Unfortunately, he couldn't find Lin Yi. Because of the chaos and light caused by the raging flame Thousand Burst Fist, he couldn't adapt to it in a short period of time. At this moment, he was simply deaf and blind. Even if Lin Yi stood in front of him, he wouldn't be able to detect him. This was the effect Lin Yi wanted. After letting out a cold laugh, the five elements killing aura in his palm, which he had been accumulating for a long time, struck again. Along with the dragon's roar that was drowned out by the loud rumbling sound, the five elements killing aura condensed into a single point and struck the center of his opponent's helmet. As expected, although Lin Yi attacked with all his might and even thought of a way to condense his destructive power into a single point, he still couldn't break through his opponent's defense in the end. It had to be said that Kong Xiaoming's AI armor's defensive capabilities were unparalleled. It would be hard to find another piece of equipment that could compare to it in this world. However, Lin Yi did not give up just like that. He used his five elemental killing aura to pierce through his opponent's armor. This was similar to the Berserk Flame Thousand Burst Fist he used to deceive others. It was only a small step in his and Han Jingjing's plan. The best part was yet to come. The 5 elements killing aura continuously bombarded the same point. If 1 was not enough, he would use 2. If 2 was not enough, he would use 3. In any case, he had an endless supply of vital energy in his body. He was not afraid of this level of consumption at all. Furthermore, Kong Ming Ming had a body full of awesome equipment. His reaction speed was so slow that it made people's hair stand on end. It seemed that as long as the Berserk Flame Thousand Burst Fist continued, he would not be able to notice that his head was being split open. This continued for almost half the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. Under Lin Yi's deliberate control, the Berserk Flame Thousand Burst Fist did not stop. As for Kong Ming Ming, it was as if he had become a fool. He allowed Lin Yi to recklessly split open his head without noticing anything. Finally, amidst the chaos, there was a faint cracking sound. The rumbling sound of the Berserk Flame Thousand Burst Fist slowly stopped. The dazzling flame then dispersed. The narrow valley path returned to its original state. Kong Ming Ming then found Lin Yi, who was standing in front of him. He immediately laughed crazily. "Pretentious head, is your brain flooded with water? Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? You know that your sneak attack didn't work, yet you didn't escape. You still dare to stand here. Are you pretending to be a fool? I'm not a fool, but you're about to become one." Lin Yi smiled faintly. Before he finished his sentence, a blue electric arc suddenly jumped out from his fingertip. It drew a clear arc and instantly landed on the top of Kong Ming Ming's helmet. Kong Ming Ming was stunned. He did not expect Lin Yi to be able to generate electricity. Could it be that Han Jingjing gave him some kind of artifact? However, he was not afraid. He was about to mock Lin Yi. One must know that his AI armor was electricity resistant. In his eyes, what Lin Yi was doing was purely a clown. However, before he could grin, he heard a cracking sound coming from the top of his head. His whole body suddenly started to twitch crazily, and he started to do a weird breakdance on the spot. Under the dazzling electric light, even the outline of his bones became vaguely visible. Black smoke kept coming out of his head. This was simply the rhythm of a person being electrocuted. Su Lingchong, who had escaped to the side, was immediately dumbfounded when he saw this scene. What was going on? He thought that Kong Ming Ming would be able to defeat Lin Yi with his awesome equipment. However, looking at the situation now, why was he the one being defeated? To be honest, Lin Yi had just mastered the power of thunder and lightning. Its power was really not that strong. However, after the insulation layer of Kong Ming Ming's AI armor was broken, it became a solid metal cage. The power of the thunder and lightning that entered it increased by several times. As long as he was still wearing this AI armor, Kong Ming Ming could not even escape. However, even so, Kong Ming Ming was still struggling like an undying cockroach. In the end, the power of Lin Yi's electric arc was too weak. In desperation, Lin Yi could only continue to activate the power of thunder and lightning. The flashing blue electric arcs were continuously injected into the metal armor. Kong Ming Ming had no chance to break free. He could only be fixed there and tremble. In this way, Kong Ming Ming was completely dominated by Lin Yi. He could no longer fight back. Even if his vitality was really like a cockroach, it was only a matter of time before he was electrocuted to death. It would just take a little more effort. However, at this moment, Hui Yudi's scream suddenly came from afar. "Be careful!" Lin Yi was shocked. In fact, even without Hui Yudi's reminder, he had already received a warning from the Jade Pendant. However, because all his attention was on Kong Ming Ming, he did not react for a moment. Moreover, the opponent's attack was too fast. There was no way to predict it in advance. There was no way to dodge it, because it was a laser. Lin Yi's action was still a little too late. An extremely dazzling and powerful laser quietly attacked at the speed of light. There was no shocking sound, but Lin Yi's abdomen was directly penetrated, and a shocking big hole was blasted out. Before Lin Yi slowly fell, he caught a glimpse of the initiator of this laser from the corner of his eye. It was actually Su Lingchong. Chapter 4721. Amidst the chaos of the raging flame, thousand explosive fist, the laser cannon was unknowingly thrown to the side and fell into Su Lingchong's hands. What was even more unexpected to Lin was that this guy actually knew how to use the laser cannon. This was a super high-tech weapon that represented the pinnacle of technology in the secular world. No matter how smart and simple the operation was, it was definitely not something that could be done by simply pulling the trigger. Without any scientific knowledge, an ordinary person wouldn't even be able to find the switch, let alone use it to kill people. Lin initially thought that only Kong Ming would know how to use this kind of thing. After all, it was like this along the way. If not, he was afraid that a small character like Kong Ming wouldn't be able to take it. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, Su Lingchong could be said to be no threat in his eyes. Just now, Lin didn't even need to specifically target him. Just the aftermath of the raging flame, thousand explosive fist was enough to make Su Lingchong unable to take it. Even if Su Lingchong still had some strength left, with his little strength, he wouldn't be able to threaten Lin at all. Even if he used his strongest martial arts, Lin had enough confidence to single-handedly take it. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that after all the steps went smoothly, he would actually fall into this guy's trap. This guy actually knew how to use the laser cannon. Looking at Lin, slowly falling down with a face full of disbelief, Su Lingchong's mouth instantly revealed a trace of a plot that had succeeded. Although the laser cannon was a very high-tech thing, he was a smart person among smart people. Previously, when he saw Kong Ming use it a few times, he had already learned it. This was just a small test. When Lin fell down, only then did Kong Ming finally escape the tragic fate of being electrocuted alive. He was almost electrocuted alive. The top of his head was constantly emitting black smoke, looking like he was already dead. However, this kid's vitality was really tenacious. Until now, he actually still had one last breath left. Of course, his consciousness was already blurred. The reason why he could still stand at this moment was purely because of the support of the smart armor. Seeing that, Su Lingchong heaved a sigh of relief. Whether Kong Ming died or not was actually not important to him, but no matter what, he was still a rare confidant. Moreover, he was going to let this kid compete for Ning Xuefei. He would be a great help in the future. Lin Yi. At this moment, Hui Yudi rushed over from the entrance and threw herself onto Lin Yi's body without a care for anything else. When she saw the ghastly bloody hole in Lin Yi's abdomen, she immediately felt the world spin around her and her mind go blank. She was a girl as cold as a snow lotus, but at this moment, she had completely disregarded her image and turned into a tearful mess. Hui Yudi herself didn't know why she was like this. Ever since she was young, this was the first time she had been so worried about someone and cared so much about him, especially when the other party was a man she had not known for long. Apart from being at a loss of what to do, Hui Yudi's mind was only filled with regret, endless regret. She hated herself for hiding so far away. If she was by Lin Yi's side just now, how could she have given Su Lingchong such an opportunity to take advantage of? How could Lin have fallen into such a precarious situation today? It was a pity. This was only her wishful thinking. The raging flame, thousand bursts, was an indiscriminate attack within a certain range, apart from Lin Yi himself. Anyone who stood within it would definitely be heavily injured, regardless of friend or foe. If Hui Yudi had really been by Lin Yi's side just now, not to mention dealing with Su Lingchong, she herself would probably have been blasted half to death first. At that time, Lin Yi would have to divert his attention to take care of her and wouldn't have the chance to focus on dealing with Kong Ming. Lin Yi, don't die. Hui Yudi helplessly looked at the frightening bloody hole in Lin Yi's abdomen. She watched helplessly as Lin Yi fell into a deep coma, his breath becoming weaker and weaker. The last remaining signs of life were about to completely disappear, but she couldn't do anything at all. Looking at Lin Yi's deathly pale face, Hui Yudi sobbed uncontrollably. Other than hating herself for being useless, she really didn't know what to do at this time. If there was a way to save Lin Yi, She was even willing to pay any price. But how could she save him? Great recovery pill. Yes, yes, I still have a supreme-grade great recovery pill. Hui Yuti was like a drowning person grabbing onto the last life-saving straw. She hurriedly took out the supreme-grade great recovery pill that her master had left for her to save her life and tried everything to make Lin Yi swallow it. Although she also knew that this might not be of any use, if she couldn't quickly think of a way to deal with the bloody hole in Lin Yi's abdomen, no matter how many supreme-grade great recovery pills he ate, it would be of no use. After all, this wasn't the secular world. If Lin Yi could still maintain his consciousness, then he would have a way to do a simple treatment for himself. But Hui Yuti didn't know how to do it. How could she do such a difficult surgery? Hui Yuti was a little more courageous. If it were any other girl, looking at Lin Yi's injury, they would have already fainted. While Hui Yuti's mind was blank from crying, on the other side, Su Lingqiong took this opportunity to put away the Thunder Xian vine that he had almost dug out. He didn't care about digging the other one. Without saying anything, he carried the half-dead and unconscious Kong Ming Ming, turned around, and ran. Although he was still carrying the laser cannon in his hand, he didn't want to continue to entangle with Hui Yuti. After all, this little girl was an expert at the peak of the nascent soul stage, and her real strength was much stronger than his. And the most important thing was Hui Yuti's background in the East Continent. He didn't want to casually incur hatred with her. Although this matter seemed to be hidden, what if it was discovered? For Su Lingqiong at this time, anyway, everything that should be done had been done, and the task had also been completed. There is really no need to continue to dawdle, lest a long night brings trouble. What's more, he suddenly killed Lin Yi with a cannon this time. When he returned, he didn't know how to explain it to the higher-ups. Although this situation was pardonable, in the end, it was still a violation of the higher-ups' order. He didn't know whether the mysterious man would blame him or not. Alas, he could only take one step at a time. However, even if the mysterious man really punished him, Su Lingqiong could only pinch his nose and accept it. Anyway, he took this opportunity to successfully get rid of his sworn enemy, Lin. No matter how he looked at it, it was not a loss for him. And if it really didn't work, he could use Kong Ming Ming to take the blame, and he could just stay out of it. On the other side, Su Lingqiong carried Kong Ming Ming and ran quickly to the exit. Hui Yuti, who was immersed in grief and hesitation, suddenly came to a realization. If Lin Yi was really going to die, then even if she had to risk her life, she would put Su Lingqiong and Kong Ming Ming, the two main culprits, to death and avenge Lin Yi. Chapter 4722. It seemed that it was too late to chase after him. After all, Hui Yuti could not possibly leave Lin Yi here with his last breath. Hui Yuti didn't know what to do at this point. She could only sit beside Lin Yi and cry her heart out. She didn't know how long it had been, but the beauty's eyes were swollen from crying. If someone else were to see this scene, they would definitely be heartbroken. People who didn't know better might even think that she was the wife of a deceased husband. No, no. Hui Yuti suddenly shook her head and mumbled to herself. I can't keep crying like this. I have to think of a way to save Lin Yi. I have to think of a way. I can't just watch him die. Hui Yuti knew that it was useless to rely on herself. The great recover pill on her was also of no help. Since she could not think of a way, she could only ask for help from others. However, no one would enter this place. After all, there were very few people who knew about this place. There were even fewer people who could pass through the Sky Thunder array outside. Hui Yuti thought for a moment and immediately prepared to carry the dying Lin Yi. No matter what, she had to get out of here first. There might be medical experts among the other participants. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, she must not let it go. Hui Yuti was using all her strength to help Lin Yi up. Suddenly, a small object fell out of her backpack. Hui Yuti looked at it and was stunned. Wasn't this the thing that Lin Yi used to communicate with Han Jingjing? Hui Yuti's breathing suddenly became rapid. This thing that Lin Yi called a cell phone was no less than a life-saving straw in her eyes. If she could communicate with Han Jingjing now, she might be able to find a way to save Lin Yi. Huiyuti did not have time to think too much. She quickly picked up the cell phone and fiddled with it. She had never seen a cell phone before and did not know how to use it. She had only seen Lin Yi use it once. Therefore, she could only rely on memory and imitate Lin Yi's actions. He tried all kinds of methods. Fortunately, there was only one number saved in the phone. Huiyuti was sweating profusely as she fumbled around for a while. She accidentally pressed the call button, and the call was successfully made. Big Brother Lin Yi, how is it? Did it work? Han Jingjing's voice came from the phone. She was anxiously waiting for Lin Yi's results on the other side. Hearing Han Jingjing's voice, Huiyuti was surprised and happy. She couldn't wait to wipe her tears and quickly picked up the phone like Lin Yi did before. He stammered, Lin Yi is in trouble. Suddenly hearing a woman's voice, Han Jingjing was immediately stunned. She couldn't help but ask in surprise, Who are you? I'm Huiyuti. I'm a disciple of the East Continent's Chunjiao Academy. Huiyuti hurriedly explained, before sobbing and begging for help. Lin Yi's stomach has been pierced by someone. He's about to die. Quickly think of a way to save him. I'm begging you. What? Big Brother Lin Yi is about to die? Han Jingjing suddenly turned pale with fright. She felt a little dizzy for a moment and almost fainted on the spot. She finally steadied herself and said, Quickly tell me in detail. How did Big Brother Lin Yi get injured? At this time, no one cared about who was on the other side of the phone, whether it was Huiyuti or Han Jingjing. The only thought in their minds was to save Lin Yi. After Lin Yi finished talking to you, he went in to beat up that rich man. I don't know what martial arts he used, but after a moment of confusion, I saw a bolt of lightning strike that rich man's body. That rich man was electrocuted until he was half dead. But the other person took the rich man's divine weapon and sneak attacked Lin Yi, punching a big hole in Lin Yi's stomach. Lin Yi is about to die now, Huiyuti said incoherently. Although the other party's words were very messy, and it was hard to understand what was going on. But Han Jingjing still understood a little, and that was the injury on Lin Yi's stomach. It was caused by the laser cannon. Listen to me, don't be anxious. Now carefully check Big Brother Lin Yi's pulse and breath. Then tell me what's the situation. Han Jingjing was unexpectedly calm. Even after she said this, she couldn't help but feel surprised. Oh, okay. Influenced by Han Jingjing, Huiyuti finally calmed down a little. She held her breath and checked Lin Yi's pulse and breath, then said with half surprise and half apprehension, There is, but it's very weak. I don't know how much longer he can last. Phew, that's good. Han Jingjing heard this and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. If it was any other normal person, even if it was a high-level cultivator with a strong vitality, if there was a big hole in his stomach like Lin Yi, he would have died a long time ago. But at this moment, Lin Yi still maintained a weak pulse and breath, which meant that he had entered a deep state of self-healing. This kind of thing was a fantasy in the eyes of others, but Han Jingjing had been with Lin Yi for a long time and had long understood the magical aspects of Lin Yi. With her attitude of always carrying out scientific research, she even understood some aspects more thoroughly than Lin Yi himself. So she firmly believed that Lin Yi would definitely not die. Back then, her abdomen was also smashed by Little 11, but in the end, it was still healed by Lin Yi, so she was very confident in Lin Yi. Calm down first. Big Brother Lin Yi will not die. Think of a way to bring Big Brother Lin Yi back first. Han Jingjing said decisively. Really? Huiyuti heard this and was immediately overjoyed. During this period of time, she was already terrified and helpless, but after hearing Han Jingjing's words, her whole person immediately became excited. Really, Big Brother Lin Yi's vitality is not comparable to that of ordinary people. Even in a deep coma, he can still self-heal. According to your description, this is the situation now, so you don't have to worry too much. Big Brother Lin Yi will definitely not die. As long as you can bring him back safely, he will definitely be able to recover. Han Jingjing comforted her gently. Oh, that's good. Huiyuti finally let out a real sigh of relief and said in her heart, Thank you. If not for you, I really would have died here. Chapter 4723. Well, I see. After saying that, Huiyuti studied for a while and finally hung up the phone. Then she looked at Lin Yi on the ground and let out a sigh of relief. She was really anxious just now, but now after listening to Han Jingjing's judgment, her heart that was hanging in midair finally fell to the ground. Although it was inevitable that she was a little worried, she was finally not as worried as before. After adjusting her breathing, Huiyuti immediately tried to carry Lin Yi on her back. This place would be closed in 5 days, and then the entire Sky Thunder Matrix outside would be reset. Without Lin Yi leading the way, she couldn't even get out, so she had to leave as soon as possible. After exiting the 5 Thunder Retribution Archway, Huiyuti carried Lin Yi on her back and walked out. She still couldn't wander around the Stonehenge outside. Fortunately, she remembered the route when she followed Lin Yi in, so she could get out smoothly. Earlier, Su Lingqiong had already carried Kong Ming Ming and rushed out. He was really afraid that Huiyuti would chase after them like crazy, so he didn't stop at all along the way. Even if he saw some treasures of heaven and earth, he directly ignored them. After all, with the Thunder Xian Rot Tan in hand, all the other treasures of heaven and earth here were relatively unimportant. The only thing Su Lingqiong wanted to do now was to return to West Island as soon as possible, in case of unexpected troubles. After running for his life day and night, Su Lingqiong's travel-worn figure appeared at the entrance of the 10,000-year Grand Canyon 5 days later, and behind him was Kong Ming Ming, who was half dead, like a dead dog. Anyway, his whole body was protected by the intelligent armor, so it was not a big problem for him to do anything. Compared with carrying him on his shoulder, it was obviously easier to drag him. Su Lingqiong didn't feel sorry for this kind of underling. It was already very kind of him to drag him all the way back. Out of the 10,000-year Grand Canyon was the oasis before. Without any hesitation, Su Lingqiong dragged Kong Ming Ming and walked out. At this moment, a group of people suddenly blocked the way. It was the Scar-Faced Man and his gang. The reason Scarface and his gang were blocking this place was naturally to plunder the loot from the trial takers that were leaving this place. They were obviously not good people. Although they had claimed that they would only take half, this was basically empty talk. Of all the trial takers that had fallen into their hands, it would already be a blessing to their ancestors if they could keep a 10th or 20% of them. If it wasn't for the fact that they were driven to desperation, Scarface and the others didn't even intend to leave 10% of the loot to these cultivators. However, they were all high-level cultivators above the Gold Core stage, and most of them were nascent Soul Stage experts. If they really wanted to fight with their lives on the line, they wouldn't be easy to deal with. So, Scarface could only give them some hope so that they wouldn't have to fight to the death. Scarface and the others were instantly shocked when they saw Su Lingqiong's figure from afar, and all of them hurriedly retreated by themselves. They didn't have the slightest ferocious appearance from before, and instead, all of them smiled obsequiously as they were deeply afraid of incurring the slightest displeasure. It couldn't be helped. The scene of Kong Xiaoming killing their second head in one shot was still fresh in their minds. It wasn't just Kong Xiaoming. Even Su Lingqiong's appearance was firmly engraved in their minds. This kind of ferocious demon was truly not to be provoked. In their line of work, to put it bluntly, they bullied the weak and feared the strong. It wasn't a big problem to be a little greedy and a little stupid, but there was a rule of survival that had to be firmly remembered. If you met someone you couldn't afford to provoke, you must hide as far away as possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know how you died. Boss. This seems a little strange. Why is that armored man being dragged on the ground? Is he dead or unconscious? The underling couldn't help but ask. That's right. Could it be that they encountered some powerful monster? Scarface was also puzzled. Boss, then should we? The underling made a throat-cutting gesture. Don't be anxious. Let's wait and see first. Scarface pinched his chin and cautiously shook his head. Although the person he feared the most, Kong Ming Ming, seemed to be on the verge of death, he couldn't figure out the details of the remaining person. However, he couldn't figure out the background of the remaining person. Although he looked like an ordinary nascent Soul Stage expert, what if he wasn't easy to deal with? As the saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. Anyway, there were many other fat sheep that could be slaughtered. Scarface didn't particularly care about the little bit of profit on the other party. So before he figured out the details, he didn't want to take risks. Since Scarface had spoken so, the other underlings naturally didn't dare to act rashly. They all retreated to the side with fear. While talking, Su Lingchong had already dragged Kong Ming Ming to a distance of 20 feet. Scarface's eyes suddenly lit up. He found a small piece of strangely shaped vine on the back of the other party's bag. There were electric arcs flashing from time to time. Thunder Xian Vine. Scarface was obviously a master who knew his stuff. Although he was already a profound Ascension Stage master and theoretically didn't need the Thunder Xian pill to deal with the Thunder Tribulation, this didn't hinder his love for good things. Especially the Thunder Xian Vine, which was a rare treasure in the world. After being shocked, Scarface carefully looked at it again. Because the other party only revealed a small tip of the iceberg, he couldn't see whether it was mature or not. But at least one thing was certain. This thing was definitely the Thunder Xian Vine. Scarface swallowed greedily. He really didn't want to let go of such a treasure. After all, the value of the Thunder Xian Vine alone was enough to cover all the other profits. But he didn't want to take risks because of this. What if the remaining kid was also not someone to be trifled with? Boss, that kid has really fainted. Let's do it. At this time, a subordinate with a full head of braids jumped out. Well, you guys go. Scarface nodded immediately, but he stepped back quietly. In this way, even if something went wrong, he could stay out of it. After obtaining Scarface's approval, the braided man immediately took the lead and rushed forward excitedly. He blocked Su Lingchong's path in a carefree manner and said, "Hand over all the heavenly treasures on you, and I can make the decision to let you live. Otherwise, get lost." Su Lingchong just wanted to return to West Island. He was not in the mood to waste time with this kind of subordinate. He immediately scolded with a cold face. "Have you forgotten what happened last time? You have no memory, you dog. Oh, you're so arrogant." Seeing this, the man with braids laughed instead of being angry. He pointed at Kong Ming Ming on the ground like a dead dog and said, "Don't play dumb with me. This armored man is half dead and can't even protect himself. You want to scare people with him? Do you really think that I don't have a brain?" Chapter 4724. Oomph. As expected of a brainless dog, Su Lingchong snorted coldly. Seeing that the other party was reaching out to grab his backpack, he immediately set up the laser cannon and fired without saying a word. The braided man was still sneering just a moment ago, but a laser flashed, and the next moment his entire head evaporated into thin air. The scene was so strange and bloody that even Scarface, who was a mountain king who killed and set fires as if it was his daily routine, was dumbfounded. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and couldn't say a word for a long time. Even though Scarface was already fearful before, he definitely didn't think that this kid would be so terrifying. It seemed that he was not any weaker than the armored man. How could he know that this had nothing to do with strength? Even if it was just an ordinary child, as long as he knew how to operate the laser cannon, he could kill people like grass. Who else? Su Lingchong aimed the laser cannon at the crowd with an unfriendly expression. Immediately, the group of people were scared and ran away like rats. The scene was really chaotic. Seeing that Su Lingchong seemed to be staring at him, Scarface immediately broke out in a cold sweat. In a moment of desperation, he quickly jumped out and shouted, "You bunch of blind idiots, you even dare to provoke such a great expert. You deserve to die. Didn't I already tell you to treat these two masters well? Are your brains filled with shit? You can't even remember such an important thing." Finished speaking, Scarface turned his head with a flattering smile and cautiously said to Su Lingchong, "Young hero, you're a great person and don't hold grudges against these lowly people. It's all my fault for not disciplining them strictly, allowing these disappointing idiots to cause trouble for you. How about I find a place for you to rest your feet? I have top-notch spirit tea. Treat it as an apology." Scarface's change of expression stunned Su Lingchong. Since the other party took the initiative to admit defeat, he naturally wouldn't kill them. After all, The other party was a true early-stage profound ascension expert. Even if he had a powerful weapon like the laser cannon, he didn't have an intelligent armor to protect his body. Facing such a strong enemy, his heart still trembled. Otherwise, Su Lingqiong wouldn't have been scared away by Huiyuti, who was a nascent soul-perfected expert. Now that he was able to scare Scarface, it was already the best result for him. No need. I'm still in a hurry. Su Lingqiong immediately refused. He was afraid that the other party would notice something, so he didn't dare to stay in such a place for long. After saying that, he directly dragged Kong Ming Ming forward. Sure. Please. Scarface hurriedly stepped aside. Even his subordinates consciously opened up a path for them. They respectfully watched as Su Lingqiong and Scarface left. Su Lingqiong dragged Kong Ming Ming towards the teleportation formation without stopping. On the other hand, Huiyuti was on the other side. He was also carrying the dying Lin Yi on his back, but he was very careful along the way. He had to be cautious with every step he took. He could only try his best to choose the path he took when he came, so as to reduce the risk as much as possible. However, in this way, her speed would be much slower. After all, she was not like Su Lingqiong, who had a super killing weapon like the laser cannon. If she encountered anything on the way, she could just blast it and be done with it. Along the way, if there was even the slightest sign of trouble, they would be alerted. Huiyuti was trembling with fear as if she was treading on thin ice. She couldn't be blamed for being timid. The key was that Lin Yi's current state was too dangerous. He really couldn't stand any more tossing and turning. It only took Su Lingqiong 5 days to drag Kong Ming Ming to the exit of the canyon, but it took Huiyuti 15 days. Whether it was the trial takers or the spirit beasts, they were all targets that she had to try her best to avoid. So she took a lot of detours on the way, and from time to time, she had to hide for a long time. Her speed was really not fast. 10 days had passed before this, and now it took another 15 days to return. So when Huiyuti carried Lin Yi out of the 10,000 Years Grand Canyon, it was already not far from the deadline of 1 month. At this time, most of the trial takers should have returned to West Island. The rest were either masters in the peak of the nascent soul realm who could stay for a few more days, or they had missed the deadline. Like Scarface's group, they were trapped here and couldn't get out. There was no third kind of people. Huiyuti carried Lin Yi on her back and appeared at the exit of the canyon. In front of them was the oasis. At this time, Scarface's group still hadn't dispersed. Instead, his group of people had grown stronger. It turned out that at this moment, not only Scarface's original group of people, but also some trial takers who couldn't get out this time were forced to choose to be under his command and become one of his men. In the crowd, Scarface said to one of his subordinates in the peak of the nascent soul realm, Han Chun, you are now at the last bottleneck of the peak of the nascent soul realm. If you continue to stay here, you will follow my footsteps and be completely trapped in this damn place. So you should take this opportunity to leave quickly. You have followed me for so long and done a lot of things for me. Even if you don't have any credit, you have worked hard. Take the things with you as a farewell gift from me. Thank you, boss. The master in the peak of the nascent soul realm, called Han Chun, was grateful on the spot. Well, all of you listen to me. As long as you follow my brothers, I will never let you suffer. Han Chun is your example. Scarface took the opportunity to win over everyone. Sure enough, everyone's mood suddenly rose, especially the new subordinates. They were originally dejected and disheartened, but after seeing this scene, they all cheered up. It had to be said that this Scarface was really good at winning people's hearts. With Han Chun as an example in front of them, everyone would only be more loyal to him. After all, as long as they followed him with peace of mind, even if they couldn't get out for the time being, when they reached the bottleneck of the peak of the nascent soul realm, they could go out like Han Chun. Only when there was hope would there be motivation. For everyone, there was no doubt that this was the best ending. So everyone was willing to follow him, and Scarface's method could be said to be tried and tested. Every trial could be replenished with a batch of fresh blood, so that his team continued to grow, becoming a real local bully here. Huiyuti looked at this scene from afar. She saw through Scarface's intentions at a glance. The reason why he wanted to send away his little brother who had reached the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm was not only to win over people's hearts, but the most important reason was that Scarface didn't want to see a second profound ascending stage master. In this place, he was the only profound ascending stage master. With his strength, he was naturally worthy of being the local tyrant. But if there was a second profound ascending stage master, then his position would not be stable. As the saying goes, one mountain cannot accommodate two tigers. It might be a situation of life and death. Sending people away could not only eliminate the threat, but also gain a good reputation. It had to be said that this Scarface was a rare smart person. Chapter 4725. However, none of this had anything to do with her. Hoi Yudi gritted her teeth and took advantage of the fact that everyone was cheering and their attention was not on this side. She carried Lin Yi on her back and carefully rushed over. She did not have the strength and confidence to face the Scar Man. Once she was stopped by these people, the consequences would be unimaginable. Hoi Yudi's movement technique was fast and light, and the strength of the peak of the Yuanying stage was not as good as the Scarred Man. At this moment, the Scarred Man was busy winning over the hearts of the people and had no time to care about this side. This was the perfect opportunity. Quietly, seeing that she was about to pass, Hoi Yudi couldn't help but start to feel a little lucky. Suddenly, a majestic figure appeared in front of her. He was also a peak of the Yuanying stage master. In terms of momentum, he was even stronger than Hoi Yudi. It was Han Shun who was set as a role model by the Scarred Man in public. Hoi Yudi's face suddenly changed. Because of this Han Shun, the eyes of the others quickly turned over. One by one, they looked at Hoi Yudi and Lin Yi on her back with a surprised expression. Hoi Yudi's heart was beating wildly. This time it's over. Han Shun looked up and down at Hoi Yudi's graceful figure and salivated, especially when he found that Lin Yi's abdomen was pierced with a fatal blood hole. His mind suddenly became active. If Lin Yi, this ruthless person, was alive, then even if he had 10,000 guts, he would never dare to touch a single hair of Hoi Yudi. But now it was different. This ruthless person was dead. Even if he was not dead, he was not far from death. What was there to be afraid of? Little girl looks pretty good. Do you want to play with Big Brother? Han Shun had a lascivious smile on his face as he reached out to touch Hoi Yudi's face. After being trapped in this place for so many years, he was already burning with lust. Now that he could have some fun before leaving, this was simply a gift from the heavens. However, before he could reach out his hand, a strong airflow suddenly surged beside him, and the Scarred Man's figure appeared beside him. Without saying a word, he slapped him away. He was dizzy and couldn't get up for a long time. Hoi Yudi was shocked. She was just about to make a move. If the opponent was just a full-circle original infant cultivator, with her strength, she would not lose. No matter what, she was a genius disciple of the East Continent's Morning Pride Academy, and her methods were far stronger than those of the same level. But now it was suddenly changed to Scarface, a peak early-stage profound ascending expert. Hoi Yudi's heart instantly sank to the bottom. How could she beat him? Unexpectedly, the Scarred Man didn't do anything to her. Instead, he smiled apologetically. No matter how one looked at it, his expression was so flattering that Hoi Yudi was stunned. Oh, boss, why did you? Han Shun felt dizzy from his slap. He looked at Scarface, feeling wronged and speechless. If you want to steal a woman, just say it. You're the boss. Do you think I dare to not let you have her? Do you have to hit me directly? Scarface rushed over and grabbed him by the collar. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "You dare to touch this woman? If you want to court death, wait until you get out. I won't stop you, but don't drag me down with you. Isn't that ruthless man already dead? What's there to be afraid of?" Han Shun curled his lips disapprovingly. Are you fucking stupid? Have you forgotten the lesson of the armored man? How many days has it been? Scarface spat and said resentfully, "Didn't the armored man also fall down? But the person beside him is also a ruthless man that none of us can afford to offend. You see, this one is lying on the ground, but how do you know what kind of person she is? What if birds of a feather flock together, and she's also a ruthless man who hides his strength? Hearing Scarface's analysis, Hanshin broke out in a cold sweat. Thinking about it carefully, it did seem to make sense. He was almost blinded by lust and made a big mistake. People who are about to go out don't fail at the last moment. If you cause trouble at this time, I won't let you go, Scarface said sternly. Yes, boss, don't worry. I will definitely not cause trouble for you. Definitely not. Hanshin nodded repeatedly and promised. Under Huiyudi's strange gaze, Scarface continued to lecture his little brother. After Scarface finished lecturing his little brother, he smiled apologetically and forced out a smile that he thought was friendly. Miss, are you preparing to go back? Huiyudi nodded. Just now. Although they spoke softly, she still heard it. So at this moment, her heart was at ease. She secretly laughed and was no longer nervous. Oh, do you want me to have someone send you? Scarface took the initiative to be attentive. No need, Huiyudi said with a cold face, then ignored everyone and quickly left with Lenny on her back. After the oasis, the rest of the journey was a monotonous desert. Previously, she felt that it was extremely boring, but for Huiyudi at this time, it couldn't be better. Because no matter how boring it was much better than being surrounded by danger. Not to mention that there was not much time left, and they couldn't afford to waste any more time. Time passed quickly. 3 days later, Huiyudi finally arrived at the teleportation formation. At this time, there were already several trial takers waiting in line. Those who rushed to go out at this time were naturally masters at the peak of Yuanying realm. When everyone saw Huiyudi and the dying Lin Yi on her back, they didn't have much reaction except for being surprised. After all, there were 2 masters from West Island here to maintain order. If you want to make trouble in this place, you had to pay the price. What's more, Huiyudi herself was also a master at the peak of Yuanying realm. If they really fought to the death, they might not be able to gain any advantage. Even if they could, they would inevitably be seriously injured because of this, and they couldn't recover in a short time. Then they wouldn't even be able to go out. Huiyudi carried Lin Yi on her back and quietly waited in line behind the crowd. After the people in front of her left one by one, Huiyudi was about to step into the teleportation formation, but she was stopped by a master from West Island. Only one person can go in. If you take him, you can't go by yourself. The master from West Island explained faintly. What? Huiyudi was shocked when she heard that. Before the trial of West Island began, she vaguely heard Yin Xinlan mention this, but she didn't take it to heart at that time. She didn't expect that it would become a fatal obstacle now. This is decided by the teleportation formation. No one can change it. Even if you carry a dead person on your back, it doesn't matter. Only one person can go through at a time. Of course, there are no restrictions on the treasures of heaven and earth. The master from West Island looked at Huiyudi with some sympathy. Chapter 4726. This woman worked so hard to carry the man who was obviously going to die back. She was really affectionate and loyal. If there was a way, they wouldn't mind making an exception for her. Unfortunately, this was not up to them. The teleportation formation was designed in this way. Even if the god of heaven came, it would be useless. Huiyudi suddenly frowned. It was not easy to get back to this place. She thought that she could take Lin Yi back to West Island and save herself from danger, but she didn't expect to be stuck at this last step. What should she do? In any case, she couldn't go back alone. Leaving Lin Yi here alone was tantamount to asking him to die. But they couldn't leave together, so she was in a dilemma. Hey, are you going to leave or not? We are still waiting in line. While Huiyudi was hesitating and in a dilemma, the people at the back of the line began to get impatient. They didn't care so much. They were in a hurry to go back. If it took too long and they couldn't go back, who could they blame? Then, let me think about it. Huiyudi had to step aside for a while and let the people at the back pass first. She found a clean place not far from the teleportation formation and settled Lenny down. Then she stayed by his side and frowned. Time passed little by little. Seeing that the trial testers who came back one after another were all teleported away, Huiyuti was still at her wit's end and couldn't come up with a feasible plan. Because of the presence of the masters from West Island, she was saved from the trouble of being harassed by other trial testers. Even Han Shun, who coveted her beauty, didn't dare to look at her when he passed by. But this didn't solve the problem. No matter how carefree she was, what was the use of being trapped here and unable to get out? 2 days later, it was a whole month. At this time, all the trial testers had left. Even those who stayed here knew that they couldn't leave, so they turned to the scarred man. At this moment, only Huiyuti and Lin Yi were left beside the teleportation formation. This is the deadline. Are you going to leave or not? If you don't leave, you really can't get out. This man is obviously going to die. There's no need for you to stay here and die with him. It seemed that the two masters of West Island were also ready to leave. After looking at each other, as women, they couldn't bear to see her leave, so they came over and advised her softly. No, I won't leave him behind. I definitely won't. Huiyuti shook her head firmly. There are plenty of fish in the sea, and there are plenty of good men in the world. Why do you have to hang yourself on a tree? One of the West Island masters sighed helplessly. West Island was a feminist society, and it was not as particular as other places. It was simply unreasonable for a woman to commit suicide for a man who was obviously going to die. A woman would commit suicide for a man. That's right, little sister. You're a peak nascent soul cultivator, right? Even if you go all out, the power you can muster will only be enough to activate the array formation now. It will be useless if you delay it for another day. You can only wait until the next trial begins. But you should be very clear about the situation in this place. As a girl, it's simply wishful thinking if you want to wait for the next trial test in peace. Those people will definitely target you. Another master from the West Island tried to persuade her. The existence of people like the Scarred Man was never a secret, but the top management of West Island never intended to deal with him. Instead, they were quite indulgent. To put it bluntly, since this was the trial place, people like the Scarred Man were like other monsters and beasts. They were all stepping stones for the trial takers, so they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. Huiyuti still shook her head. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and said, "Two sisters. If I make a move with all my strength and try to teleport him out first, I wonder if it will work?" This was the only way she could come up with after thinking about it for the past 2 days. Although she also knew that it might not be so easy in case it was really feasible. Anyway, there was no one else waiting in line now. She believed that the two masters of West Island should be able to give her a clear answer. In that case, you can't get out by yourself. Now it's been a month. If you want to start the transmission formation, you have to use your strongest move. You can't hold back at all. Only in this way can you barely succeed. In fact, even so, you may not be able to get out. This is not a joke. The master of West Island warned him in a stern voice. Yes, 1 month is the limit of a master in the peak of Yuanying realm. You can't have any more losses. Another master of West Island also shook his head and added, besides, if you want to put him into the transmission formation and stand outside to start the transmission, although it's not completely impossible, it's very difficult because the eye of the transmission formation is hidden inside. If there is no special move, you can't reach it from the outside at all. You have to think about it clearly. This, Huiyuti gritted her teeth and thought for a while. No matter whether it would work or not, she should try her best to see if she could send Lin Yi out first. But in this way, no matter whether Lin Yi could be successfully transmitted out in the end or not, she would definitely not be able to get out. This was equivalent to using her own fate as a bet to fight for a chance for Lin Yi. As for the difficulty that the two masters of West Island said, Huiyuti didn't take it too seriously. After all, she was a genius disciple of East Continent's Morning Pride Academy. She still had this kind of means. You'd better come with us. This kind of attempt is completely meaningless. No matter what, one of you has to stay. If you choose him, not to mention the fact that you may not succeed, even if you really succeed, with his dying state, I guess he can't bear the burden of the transmission, and maybe he'll die even faster. Seeing that the time was almost up, the two masters of West Island finally persuaded her. Huiyuti was suddenly shocked when she heard this. If they hadn't reminded her, she would have forgotten this point. The transmission process was a huge burden on the body. For cultivators, it naturally didn't matter in normal times, but in the current state of Lin E, what they said was really not an alarmist. Moreover, even if Lin E could get through it now, if there was no one to care about him when he arrived at West Island, even if there was only a little gap in the middle, there might be unexpected trouble. What if Kaizi and his helpers were waiting at the door of the transmission formation on the opposite side, waiting for a chance to kill him? In this way, it was too risky to send Lin E out alone, and obviously it was not a wise choice. But if Hui Yuti was asked to go alone, she would never agree. Chapter 47:27. There was no reason. This was almost her instinctive thought. In any case, she must guard Lin E. As for the serious consequences of staying here, Hui Yuti didn't think much about it at all. Anyway, it was useless to think too much at this time. You're not leaving? Then you really can't leave. The two masters suddenly looked at each other and couldn't help but be shocked. If you stay here, I don't know how long you'll have to wait. It's unknown when the next trial will start. You should know that our West Island trial doesn't open regularly. If you're lucky, it may only open once a year. If you're unlucky, it may open for decades or even hundreds of years. It depends on the week period of the formation. I understand. I understand what you two sisters said, but I can't leave him here alone. I appreciate your kindness, but you don't need to persuade me anymore, Hui Yuti said firmly. The two masters looked at each other, and their faces were moved. Although they felt sorry for Hui Yuti, such an affectionate and righteous woman deserved everyone's respect. Since the other party had made up her mind, it was futile for them to persuade her. After all, they didn't know each other. It was already very good that they could do this. Well, but you have to be careful when you stay here. Find a hidden place nearby to hide. If there's nothing else, it's best not to go inside again. I believe you know what those guys are like, not to mention they have profound ascending stage masters. You can't beat them. The two masters sighed. They couldn't continue to waste time here, so they could only give this last kind reminder. Thank you, two sisters. Hui Yuti nodded. After watching the two masters leave, she quietly stayed by Lin Yi's side, looking at him blankly. No one knew what she was thinking in her mind. At the same time, on the other side, in the side courtyard of the West Island's palace, all the challengers who came out one after another had gathered in the open space next to it. It was bustling and crowded. Although the trial of West Island itself didn't stipulate the so-called trial time, today was the deadline of 1 month. In terms of objective conditions, this was already the actual deadline of the trial. If they didn't come out after today, it meant that they couldn't come out at all. At this moment, in order to congratulate the successful return of the trial takers, in order to show their solemnity. This time, it wasn't West Island's deputy island master Yin Xinlan who presided over the overall situation, but West Island's island master herself, Ning Shangling. Compared to the previous birthday banquet, Ning Shangling was clearly much closer to the crowd this time. With a friendly smile on her face, she leisurely walked among the crowd and waved to everyone from time to time. Wherever Ning Shangling passed, the crowd would burst into an uproar. To be able to come into contact with this beautiful island lord, who had always been high and mighty, at such a close distance, all the trial takers felt genuinely flattered. Of course, even if they had some dirty thoughts in their hearts, they would never dare to show it in this place. Ning Shangling was like an empress in West Island. If anyone dared to blaspheme it, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't walk out of West Island alive. Behind the beautiful Ning Shangling was Ning Shuafei, who was as pure as a fairy. According to the rules, the princess of West Island could not easily show her face in public, but the trial of West Island this time was a little special, and it was related to her marriage. Her future husband was very likely to be among this group of trial takers, so it was reasonable for her to follow her mother to appease the crowd. As Ning Shuafei's best friends, Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing naturally stayed by her side. At this time, the three women were not in the mood to watch the fun, and they frequently looked at the exit of the transmission formation. Han Jingjing had already told Ning Shuafei and Shanghai Laner that Lin Yi was seriously injured and in a coma. Although they knew that someone was taking care of him, they still couldn't help but worry and be nervous. If Ning Shangling hadn't forbidden them, the three of them would have run to the transmission formation to wait for him. If they could, they even wished they could be transmitted in. Time went by bit. Seeing that the trial takers hadn't come out for a long time, the three women couldn't help but become more and more anxious. Was there any problem? After all, the three of them had investigated the matter of the teleportation circle. While it wasn't entirely impossible to teleport an unconscious Lin Yi over, it was still an extremely difficult task. At this point in time, one could only imagine the price the enemy had to pay. There were two choices, either to keep herself or to keep Lin Yi. If it were the three of them, they would definitely sacrifice themselves to transmit Lin Yi out without hesitation. But the other party was just a strange woman whom they had just met. Would she do that? No one knew the answer, so they could only wait. However, under the expectation of the three women, Lin Yi's figure didn't appear for a long time. Until the two guards of West Island came back, Lin Yi still didn't come out. Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner looked at each other, and their faces suddenly became a little pale. Ning Shuifei almost fainted on the spot at this moment. This wasn't just related to Lin Yi's safety, it was also related to her marriage. She had practically pinned all her hopes on Lin Yi, and the blow she suffered at this moment was so heavy that she couldn't bear it. There's no one inside. At this moment, a woman suddenly rushed up and hurriedly asked the two guards of West Island who had just walked out of the transmission formation. This person was the East Continent's Morning Pride Academy's Vice Headmaster, Lu Ziyu. As the leader of the East Continent Academy this time, Lu Ziyu's every action represented the East Continent Academy. So, she had always spoken appropriately and had never lost her composure as she did now. At this moment, her expression was extremely ugly, even more so than Ning Shuifei and the other two women. Because not only had Lin Yi not come out, her precious disciple, Hui Yudi, had also not come out. To her, Hui Yudi was not only the most important personal disciple, but in a sense, she was also like a mother and daughter. She had painstakingly brought her up from infancy, and this kind of relationship was far from that of an ordinary master-disciple relationship. The two guards of West Island were instantly shocked and took a closer look at Lu Ziyu. Knowing that she was a good friend of Island Master Ning Shangling, they didn't dare to slight her and immediately replied respectfully, "There's a woman beside the transmission formation and a man whose status is unknown. However, like the rest of the people, they probably won't be able to come out." Chapter 4728. So that affectionate girl was actually Lu Ziyu's personal disciple. The two West Island guards instantly came to a realization, and then explained, that girl could have come out herself, but in order to accompany the man whose life or death is unknown, she took the initiative to give up this opportunity. She has already made up her mind. The two of us tried to persuade her for a long time, but it was useless. What? Die? Who would stay behind for a man? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but frown, his gaze sweeping across the crowd, finally landing on Ren Zhongyan, Xiao Tian, and Yao Jelly. Lu Ziyu understood this precious disciple of his very well. Although this girl was very powerful, and she wasn't young in terms of age, she had spent most of her time in seclusion training these past few years, and her temperament was even purer than some ordinary girls. In Morning Pride Academy, with Hui Yudi's status, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to easily strike up a conversation with her, and among all the disciples of the academy who had come to the West Island this time, the only ones who could really talk to her were Ren Zhongyuan and the other two, especially Ren Zhongyan, who had been trying to pursue Hui Yudi all these years. If it was said that during this training, the relationship between the two of them had progressed, and Hui Yudi had chosen to stay behind for Ren Zhongyuan's sake, Lu Ziyu could more or less understand it. But now that Ren Zhongyuan had already returned, who would she be guarding? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but start to suspect. Could it be that the girl these two West Island guards were talking about was actually not his own disciple Hui Yudi, but someone else? You're saying that Sister Huiyuti took the initiative to stay behind in order to take care of Brother Linny? Han Jingjing suddenly came up at this moment and couldn't wait to confirm with the West Island guards. The two West Island guards who had just come out looked at each other. They were very familiar with Han Jingjing, who had lived here for a few years, and said with some uncertainty, "We also don't know if that man and woman are the Lin Yi and Huiyuti you mentioned. We only know that the man's injuries are very serious, and there's a very large hole in his stomach. It looks like he won't be able to survive." "There's no mistake. That's Brother Lin Yi," Han Jingjing confirmed, and then winked at Ning Shuifei and Shangwan Lanner, who were anxious next to her. He gestured for them to relax a little. Since Huiyuti didn't hesitate to throw her life away and insisted on staying inside to accompany Lin Yi, it proved that Lin Yi wasn't dead yet. Otherwise, what was the point of her guarding inside? From Han Jingjing's point of view, as long as her big brother Lin Yi wasn't dead, then there must be a way to get out. This kind of thing definitely wouldn't be a problem for big brother Lin Yi. When Lu Ziyu heard Han Jingjing's words, she couldn't help but frown. Although she didn't know how Han Jingjing could be so sure, judging from her appearance. It was as if that woman was indeed his precious disciple. The fact that Huiyuti was safe and sound made her heave a sigh of relief. It was just that her precious disciple had actually stayed behind for a man. Moreover, it was a man that she had never met before. This matter was truly strange. What? Brother Ling is heavily injured and won't be able to survive? How is this possible? Qi Wenhan, who was not far away, immediately turned pale with fright when he heard this. He and Xia Luoluo were not greedy for heavenly treasures, and this trial was more like an outing for the two of them. Therefore, after they had harvested something, they had left early. These past few days, they had been waiting to reunite with Lin Yi. But in the end, he received this grievous news. Qi Wenhan's vision darkened, and he nearly fainted. Fortunately, Xia Luoluo supported him from the side, and he barely managed to stabilize himself. Wenhan, don't be anxious. With Brother Ling's abilities, he might not necessarily die. Let's figure this out first. Xia Luoluo comforted softly. She had a good impression of Lin, especially since he was Qi Wenhan's big backer. If something really happened this time, then the matter between her and Qi Wenhan would inevitably have another variable. At this moment, within the crowd, Renzhong Yuan and the others were also paying close attention to the movement of the teleportation array, especially Renzhong Yuan. Like Lu Ziyu, he had always been anticipating Huiyuti's figure, but unfortunately, the person he loved had not appeared even after a long time. Now, after hearing these words, Renzhong Yuan's heart was instantly filled with mixed feelings. Lin Yi was about to die, and this was considered good news to him. Basically, any man who got close to Huiyuti was someone who deserved to die in his eyes. However, the pure and clean goddess in his heart, Huiyuti, was actually willing to risk her life to accompany this fellow who was about to die. How could Renzhong Yuan, as her pursuer, endure this? At the same time, the expressions of the other two people in the crowd were somewhat complicated. These two people were the ones who had caused Lin Yi's fatal injuries, Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming. After these few days of recuperation, Kong Mingming had already completely recovered. After all, Lin Yi had only just grasped the power of lightning, and its power was really limited. Kong Mingming was only in a more miserable state when he was electrocuted. Relying on the tenacious vitality of a high-level cultivator, he was already able to move freely after a few days. Otherwise, he would not have been able to teleport back. Now that they heard the news that Lin Yi was about to die, Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming could not help but look at each other. In reality, from the way they saw it, Lin Yi was definitely going to die. No matter who it was, they would not be able to survive after having such a big hole in their stomach. Lin Yi was still able to struggle at death's door. It could only be said that this fellow's vitality was really terrifyingly tenacious. But even so, in their eyes, Lin Yi was already a dead man. Getting rid of such a sworn enemy was, of course, a great thing for them. But the problem was, how could they explain this to their superiors? Before this, because Su Lingqiong was afraid of being blamed by his superiors, he did not dare to say it was so serious when he wrote the action report. He only briefly mentioned that they had injured Lin Yi, and that Lin Yi could not recover in a short period of time. He might not be able to come out for the time being, and it was estimated that he would be trapped in the trial ground for the next few years. When a mysterious man received his report, he saw that Lin Yi was only temporarily trapped, so he did not say much. But now this matter was exposed in public, and now everyone knew about it. This matter was about to be exposed. Headache. At this moment, Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming both had a headache and did not know what to say. Killing Lin Yi was already a violation of their superiors' strict orders, and now they had to add a felony of deceiving their superiors. When the mysterious man found out, he would definitely be furious. At that time, there might be a cruel and inhumane punishment. What should they do? On the other side, after hearing the conversation between the two guards of West Island and Han Jingjing, two powerful experts with cold auras also showed a shocked expression. These two were the top figures in the younger generation of North Island. One was Ram Jie, and the other was Lan Tiefu. Chapter 47:29. But in the eyes of these two people, whether it was Ram Jie or Lan Tiefu, there were some hidden meanings that people couldn't quite understand. They didn't feel pity for the death of Lin Yi, a genius junior, but there seemed to be some inexplicable solemnity in their eyes. Except for these people, the rest of the people who heard the words more or less stirred up, but they didn't care about it. After all, whether it was Lin Yi or Hui Yudi, they had nothing to do with these people, and they didn't gather here for these two people. For them, it didn't matter whether Lin Yi died or not. They only cared about one thing, which was who could laugh to the end in this West Island trial and finally become the son-in-law of Ning Shangling, the island owner of West Island. Today was the objective deadline of the trial, and it was also the time to check the harvest of all the trial takers. If everything went well, it was likely that the result would be out within today, so Ning Shangling showed up in person. But now that everything had happened so suddenly, Ning Shuafei, who was the main character, had suffered a huge blow. Her face was pale, and she could not even stand properly. She had to rely on Han Jingjing and Shangwan Lan'er to support her to maintain her balance. As for Lu Ziyu, the leader of the East Continent Academy, who was an important guest, he also had a worried look on his face. He was obviously not in the right state. In this case, it was obviously not appropriate to continue to operate according to the original plan. Ning Shangling pondered for a moment and changed her mind. Then she ordered Yin Xinlan, the deputy island owner, to come forward and announce, "Everyone, please take out the trophies you got in this trial. We have special staff to register them. After that, you can go back and have a rest. We will choose a day to invite guests to judge. As for the specific follow-up, please go back and wait patiently for the news." Hearing this, everyone was suddenly disappointed. They all thought that the result would be out today, but they didn't expect that they still had to wait. For those trial takers who thought they had a chance to stand out, this waiting process was undoubtedly a kind of torture. However, since Yin Xinlan had already announced it in public, what was done could not be undone. It was useless for them to object. In fact, no one dared to object. At most, they just complained a little in private. When the disciples of West Island came to register their trophies, they left one after another. As soon as Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming returned to the room of the envoy's mansion in West Island, before they could sit down and take a breath, a bloody bat came to them. It carried the mysterious man's handwritten order. "Regarding Lin Yi's matter, you must give us an explanation. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." The tone of the handwritten letter was extremely harsh. This time, it didn't even use code words. It could be seen that the mysterious man was really angry. Looking at the fierce handwriting, Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming's eyelids twitched violently. Although it was just a sentence of "bear the consequences," which did not seem too scary at first glance, it was the mysterious man who said it. Behind these 4 words, their life and death were directly decided. Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming had no doubt that if they couldn't give a reasonable reason and explanation this time, they would definitely be in big trouble. It was even possible that they would die because of it. What should we do? Hurry up and think of a way. Su Lingqiong's voice was harsh, and at the same time, he looked at Kong Mingming with an unkind look. If they couldn't find a decent reason, he was ready to take this guy as a scapegoat. Only in this way could he escape the disaster. Yes, Child Su, don't worry. There will be a way. There must be a way. Kong Mingming was so scared that he quivered in his heart. Although he didn't have any great wisdom, he was never short of petty cleverness. Especially this kind of insidious and vicious thing. He was an expert. As soon as he saw Su Lingqiong's eyes, he knew what this guy was thinking. You'd better come up with a way. Otherwise, if the higher-ups really investigate, one of us must die. It's up to you. Su Lingqiong said coldly. Yes. Kong Mingming was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. Seeing that there was a hint of killing intent in the other party's eyes, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said, I got it, Child Su. I have an idea. What idea? Say it quickly. Su Lingqiong urged hurriedly. Child Su, although Lin Yi's injury is very serious, he still hasn't died until now. This means that he most likely won't die. I know this guy very well. His vitality is very strong. In the past, this kind of situation happened several times, but he didn't die. It will definitely be the same this time. Besides, if he really can't make it, why is the girl still guarding him? Kong Mingming nervously licked his lips and analyzed carefully. This makes sense. Su Lingqiong's eyes lit up when he heard that. As long as it proved that Lin Yi wouldn't die, the higher-ups should not be so persistent in this matter. Then, the 2 of them could also escape a disaster. Immediately, he nodded and said, Okay, I'll reply as you said. After the 2 of them sent out the letter, they stayed in the room and didn't go out, waiting for the mysterious person's reply anxiously. If they couldn't explain it in this way, they would really have to bear the consequences. After waiting for a long time in fear and trepidation, the 2 of them finally waited for the bloodbath. They couldn't wait to open the mysterious person's letter. There was only one sentence on it. For the sake of the Thunder Xian Vine, don't do it again. Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming looked at each other, then let out a long sigh of turbid air, sat on the ground like a deflated ball, and didn't move for a long time. This time, they were really scared, but fortunately, they escaped a disaster. They were fine here, but on the other side, Ning Shuifei directly fainted after returning to the island owner's temporary imperial residence. She was under too much pressure. Even if Han Jingjing had comforted her in a low voice, it didn't help. Previously, she could still hold on the way, but after returning to the room, she only felt dizzy and immediately fainted. This scene really gave Ning Shangling a big fright. She hurriedly carefully examined Ning Shuifei and found that there was nothing wrong with her body except a little fever. As long as she slept, she should get better. Only then did the island owner of West Island finally let out a sigh of relief. With her 2 best friends, Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing, accompanying her, Ning Shangling had nothing to worry about. She immediately took her people out of the room. It was impossible for her to personally accompany Ning Shuifei. After all, as the island owner of West Island, there were still many things to do, such as comforting Lu Ziyu, who was also burning with anxiety. Staying at the bedside of Ning Shuifei, although Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner were also very anxious, they were much better than Ning Shuifei. For them, as long as Lin Yi was alive, that was enough. Chapter 4730. She would feel that it was her fault that Lin Yi fell into this situation. If it weren't for her, Lin Yi wouldn't have gone to participate in the trial of West Island at all, and he wouldn't have been seriously injured like this. If it weren't for this, Ning Shuifei wouldn't have fainted. No one would be able to bear such a big thing, let alone a simple little girl like her. Waiting on the side, Han Jingjing whispered a few words to Shanghai Laner. Then she took out her mobile phone and dialed number. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She didn't know if she could still get through the phone. After she bought these 2 mobile phones, she installed solar charging panels. After all, in a place like Heaven Stage Island, there was basically no other way to charge it except solar energy. Although she didn't have to worry too much about the power problem, if the weather on the trial land was bad and there was no sun for a long time, then it would be hard to say. Fortunately, after waiting for a while, the phone finally beeped, indicating that the phone was connected. Han Jingjing reluctantly breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Han Jingjing's movements, Shanghai Laner, who was next to her, also pricked up her ears. Although she had learned about Lin Yi's condition from the 2 guards of West Island, both she and Han Jingjing wanted to confirm it with Hui Yudi in person. They waited patiently, but after a few seconds, Han Jingjing suddenly froze. "What's wrong?" Shanghai Laner thought that something had happened, so she quickly asked anxiously. She hung up on me," Han Jingjing said in a daze. Before she finished speaking, her mobile phone suddenly rang. She quickly picked it up and said, "Hello, is this Sister Hui Yudi? I'm Han Jingjing." "Oh, it's me." Hui Yudi's embarrassed voice came from the phone. It was a pure mistake just now. She only knew how to make a phone call, but she didn't know how to answer the phone. She was so excited that she hung up the phone, so she could only call back quickly. "Sister Hua, how is Brother Linny now?" Under the urging gaze of Shanghai Laner, Han Jingjing didn't have time to chat. She asked quickly. "His aura and pulse are almost the same as before. Although it's very weak, he can still barely maintain it. However, I don't know how long he can last like this." Hui Yudi said worriedly. Lin Yi's current condition couldn't be said to be good. He could only be said to be hanging by a thread. If he was in the secular world, he would be in a state of critical illness at all times. If he could endure it, everything would be fine. But if there was even the slightest mishap, he would immediately die. "Sister Hua, remember one thing. To Big Brother Lin Yi, no change is the best news, so you must have faith in him." Han Jingjing encouraged her. "I understand. Don't worry, I will take good care of him." Hui Yudi was obviously much calmer now. "Thank you, Big Sister Hua. If it weren't for you, we really wouldn't know what to do. It's all thanks to you accompanying Big Brother Linny. You must take care of yourselves. We will wait for your safe return in West Island." Han Jingjing was sincerely grateful. Apart from other things, Hui Yudi was willing to stay in the trial ground for Linny. This alone had already moved her very much. "Don't say that. I am willing to accompany him." Hui Yudi's voice suddenly became weak and inaudible. She didn't know why she suddenly had a feeling of a concubine meeting her legal wife at this time. Although she also knew that this thinking was very strange, she couldn't help thinking in this direction. She was even a little unable to extricate herself. The two talked for a few more words. In the end, she specially told Hui Yudi to take out her mobile phone to bask in the sun and charge it often. Only then did Han Jingjing hang up the phone and look at Laner next to her. They breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. "How is he?" At this time, Ning Shuefei suddenly woke up faintly. The first thing she said was to ask about Lin Yi's situation. "Fei Fei, don't worry. Big Brother Lin, he is fine. He is recovering on his own, and Sister Hui Yudi is next to him. There will be no problem." Han Jingjing comforted her. "Really? That's good, that's good." Ning Shuefei's face finally regained some color. After pausing for a moment, she suddenly reacted and asked, "Hui Yudi is Deputy Dean Lu's disciple, right? She seems to have rarely left the East Continent. How did she know Lin Yi?" Han Jingjing pouted and said, "I also don't know about this. Haven't I been with you for the past 2 years, Fei Fei? As for what Big Brother Lin Yi has experienced, it was you guys who told me." "That's not right. Little junior brother hasn't been to the East Continent for the past 2 years. I haven't heard him mention any girls at all." Shangwan Lanner had the most say in this regard. After thinking for a while, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she said, "Jing Jing, do you remember that before the trial began, there was a girl with a veil who wanted to strike up a conversation with junior brother? Was that Hui Yudi?" "It can't be. Big Brother Lin, he clearly rejected her at that time. She was rejected in public. As a girl, she can't possibly go and pester Big Brother Linny, right?" Han Jingjing shook her head. Who knows? Maybe something happened after she went in? Shanghai Laner said thoughtfully. No matter what, she sacrificed herself to stay with Lin Yi and never left him. We have to find a way to thank her. Although Ning Shuifei was weak at the moment, when she said this, she had a kind of bearing. It seemed that she had unconsciously regarded herself as Lin Yi's woman. What are you thanking her for? Big sister Hua doesn't need us to thank her. If you really want to repay her, let little junior brother devote himself to her. Shanghai Laner sneered. Devote himself to her? Hearing this, Ning Shuifei and Han Jingjing were stunned. They were grateful, but they had never thought about this. You two are really stupid. Big sister Hua and little junior brother met by chance. If she didn't fall in love with little junior brother, why would she sacrifice herself to accompany him? She's a pure girl. If this kind of thing is spread out, her reputation will be ruined. Of course, only junior brother can be responsible for it. Shangwan Lan'er analyzed seriously. Ning Shuifei and Han Jingjing looked at each other and finally closed their mouths after a long time. This was a little unexpected. However, Shanghai Laner's analysis was not unreasonable. Otherwise, they really couldn't think of any other reasonable reasons. Fei Fei, Jing, congratulations. You will soon have another sister. Shangwan Lan said with a mischievous smile. Chapter 4731. Shanghai Laner suddenly blushed and couldn't speak. She wanted to deny it, but she didn't know why she was reluctant. Although she had never thought about this, she would never agree to marry another man without Lin Yi. Is there a better man than little junior brother in this world? Shangwan Lan'er seriously doubted it. Like Ning Shuifei, who didn't want to marry other men, she didn't want to be separated from her best friends. At this moment, she couldn't help but think shyly, my body has been seen by little junior brother. Does this mean that we're officially friends? Looking at Shanghai Laner's blushing face, Ning Shuifei and Han Jingjing suddenly laughed together. After all, they were all simple-minded girls. After such a scene, the previous gloomy clouds suddenly disappeared. The three women even began to discuss the problem of who was older and who was younger with great interest on the other side. After Hui Yudi hung up the phone, she was not as carefree as the three of them. However, after listening to Han Jingjing's words of comfort, her heart finally felt a little more at ease. She no longer thought about it. She only wanted to protect Lin Yi by her side, looking forward to his gradual recovery. Lin Yi actually knew everything that Hui Yudi had done for him. Although he was seriously injured now, he couldn't even open his eyes, let alone speak. However, during the time when his injury was about to recover, he already had some consciousness. Feeling the gentle breath of Hui Yudi close at hand, Lin Yi was extremely moved at this moment. What Hui Yudi had done had far exceeded the kindness of temporary teammates, let alone a union of interests. Even good friends who had known each other for decades might not be able to do this for her. After all, Hui Yudi did this, and she had sacrificed a lot. In order to accompany Lin Yi, she almost risked herself. She was simply risking her life to accompany him. She didn't even hesitate to risk her life, let alone a girl's reputation and integrity. Although Lin Yi was quite slow in the emotional aspect, he was not a fool. However, he wasn't a fool. At this moment, he finally understood that perhaps there were some unexplainable feelings between him and Hui Yudi. In fact, they both knew why Hui Yudi was willing to do this for him. After coming to Heavenly Island, Lin Yi didn't want to provoke more love debts. This was really unfair to his confidants. Unfortunately, he was a genius in other aspects. But in the emotional aspect, he was really slow to the point that people didn't know what to say. Every time it happened, it was the girl who took the initiative, and Lin Yi himself was an extremely soft-hearted person. Getting him to put down his pride and reject her face was harder than ascending to the heavens. Especially in this case, Hui Yudi was willing to give up her life and reputation for him. What else could he say? He was touched and helpless at the same time. He could only tell himself that in his heart. This time, no matter what, he couldn't let Hui Yuti down. She had done so much for him, and as a man, if he still hesitated and backed down, that would be too unreasonable. As for now, there was only one thing that he had to do, and that was to work hard to recover. Although most of the trial takers had already left, there was still Scarface and the others. Hui Yuti alone couldn't stand firm in this trial ground. He had to recover as soon as possible so that he could rest easy. West Island Master Palace, in a side hall study, two women sat opposite each other. It was West Island Master Ning Shangling and East Continent Morning Pride Academy Deputy Dean Lu Ziyu. The study was the same as the boudoir. It was Ning Shangling's private place. Generally, outsiders couldn't come in, but Lu Ziyu and she were good friends who had known each other since childhood. Although there was a difference in strength, they weren't outsiders. "Shangling, do you know who that Linny is?" Lu Ziyu asked with a strange expression. She really couldn't imagine that her precious disciple would take the initiative to stay inside for a man she didn't know. At this moment, she felt an inexplicable emptiness in her heart, as if the flesh of her heart had been snatched away. This Lin is indeed a very rare talent. Among the younger generation of the 5 great heavenly islands that have recently risen up, he can be considered a rare, outstanding talent. Ning Shangling smiled and said honestly, "To be honest with you, Ziyu, I actually think quite highly of this kid. He's one of the candidates that I'm interested in as Fei Fei's husband." "This kid is really that famous?" Lu Ziyu instantly revealed a surprised expression when she heard that. Who was Ning Shangling? She was the West Island Master, a top-notch existence that could be counted on one's fingers even in the 5 great heavenly islands. With her level and status, ordinary so-called super geniuses wouldn't catch her eye at all. Even a place like East State College where geniuses gathered, there were very few young disciples that Ning Shangling could remember, let alone get such a high evaluation from her. At least from what Lu Ziyu knew, this old friend of hers had never evaluated a young man like that. To be able to make her a candidate for her daughter's husband, he was equivalent to half an heir of the West Island in the future. Was this Lin Yi really that amazing? He can't really be considered famous. In terms of fame, he's actually far inferior to Nakajima and the few from the East Continent. However, if you carefully understand what he's done, you'll know that he's extraordinary. Ning Shangling was rather emotional. Seeing that Lu Ziyu didn't seem to believe her, she smiled and gave an example. "You also know that the West Mountain Evil Sect is a great threat to our West Island." Chapter 4732. Kill Who? Lu Ziyu was taken aback. Someone who could make West Mountain Old Sect, a big shot of evil cultivators, come out personally was definitely not an ordinary person. Most likely, it was only the top experts of those famous sections. "It's Lin Yi." Ning Shangling smiled faintly. "Lin Yi." Ning Shangling was instantly shocked and couldn't help but be moved. "Is that true? How did he offend West Mountain Old Sect?" The reason is actually very simple. He killed an evil cultivator named Wu Baoyang. This person was the direct disciple of the West Mountain Sect's elder, and he was also his nephew. That's why this old thief was alerted, Ning Shangling explained. So that's how it is. No wonder the old thief was so angry. But with such a big-shot evil cultivator at the opening of the mountain personally hunting him down, how could he still live until now? Could it be that there's some expert protecting him? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but ask curiously. Although she hadn't paid attention to Lin Yi before, since he could participate in the West Island trial, it meant that his strength was at most at the peak of the nascent soul stage. This strength was already extremely high for most cultivators, but in front of evil cultivators at the level of West Mountain Old Sect, he was no different from an ordinary person. He could be crushed to death with just a thought. If there wasn't an expert helping him, Lu Ziyu wouldn't believe that a mere nascent soul stage expert could survive under the hands of West Mountain Old Sect. It was simply a fantasy. There really isn't. It's not like you don't know about the South Continent Sea. Apart from the Spirit Beast clan, who can contend against the experts of West Mountain Old Sect. Ning Shangling laughed. That's true. The Spirit Beast clan secludes themselves from the world, and evil cultivators or not have nothing to do with them. They're not like the famous sects who would shout at an old thief like West Mountain Old Sect. If there's no personal enmity, normally no one would take the initiative to deal with West Mountain Old Sect. Lu Ziyu nodded and then became interested. She asked curiously, but if that's the case, how did Linny escape from West Mountain Old Sect? It's not quite possible with just his own words, right? When I first saw the tip-off, I actually also felt that it was incredible. But the fact is that Lin Yi survived from the hands of West Mountain Old Sect with his own strength. Ning Shangling sighed with emotion. How is this possible? Lu Ziyu was greatly astonished. At their level, there were very few things that could cause her to lose her composure. But a mere original infant-stage cultivator was able to escape from the West Mountain Elders' pursuit. This was not only shocking, it was completely subverting their worldview. Apart from Lin Yi himself and Grandmaster Shishan, I'm afraid no one else knows the specific process. Ning Shangling shook her head and laughed. If one wanted to become Ning Shangling's husband, it wasn't enough to just be strong. The most important thing was to know his background. Only then could they ensure the stability of the West Island in the future. If that's really the case. Lu Ziyu's expression changed. She muttered to herself for a moment, then finally sighed and said, "Sigh, forget it. If it really doesn't work, I'll just wait here for a few years. Since he's a disciple that Big Brother Shangwan thinks highly of, he's a good match for Dyer. I really can't say anything more. Ziyu, if you can really have Lin Yi as your son-in-law, it's your blessing. If it wasn't for the fact that I've already announced that only those who pass the trial can become my son-in-law, do you think I'd give him to you so easily? And you're still sighing here, as if you've suffered a great loss. I really don't know what to say." Ning Shangling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lu Ziyu smiled a little awkwardly. Although there was nothing wrong with what she said, Hui Yudi was, after all, the flesh of her heart. She had treated her like her own daughter since she was young. Now that she suddenly found out that the flesh of her heart was going to leave with someone else, she really didn't feel good. Most parents probably had this kind of mentality. As the two of them were talking, a disciple from the West Island suddenly came in to report. He said in an urgent tone, "Reporting to Island Lord, when I was registering the trial takers just now, I found a person named Kong Ming Ming digging up an immature Thunder Xuan Wu, and he even dug it up by the roots." After all, everything in the trial was up to fate, and it was common for people to kill others and seize their treasures. Moreover, there was no rule that she couldn't touch the Thunder Xian vine in advance. Even if she wanted to punish Kong Ming Ming, what reason did she have to take revenge afterwards? What Kong Ming Ming did was shameless, but if Ning Shangling really blamed him for it, the whole West Island would become the laughingstock of the world. It was related to the reputation of West Island, so she could only swallow it. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and there was still no news from Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. In fact, everyone knew that the two of them had been trapped inside and couldn't get out. The maximum time limit for a master at the peak of the nascent soul realm was 1 month, and a whole month and a half had passed. Just because the masters above the nascent soul realm couldn't activate the transmitting formation. Even immortals couldn't come out again. The trial on the Western Island was so noisy that it couldn't keep dragging on like this. After all, there had to be a final conclusion, or it would be like breaking the promise. Although Ning Shuafei had pleaded with Ning Shangling several times these days, she, Han Jingjing, and Shanghai Laner all believed her. She asked her to try to delay it for a while, preferably until Lin Yi came back. She, Han Jingjing, and Shanghai Laner all believed it. As long as Lin Yi recovered, he would definitely find a way to get out. However, this kind of thing couldn't be decided by Ning Shangling alone. After all, this was a big event of the whole West Island, and all the sects of other Heaven Stage Islands were paying attention to it. No matter how much she spoiled her daughter, she couldn't make fun of the reputation of the whole West Island. Delaying it for half a month was the limit, and she really couldn't delay it any longer. Regarding this result, Ning Shuifei, who had just recovered a little from the blow of Lin Yi's serious injury, really wanted to cry, but had no tears because she already knew who was the destined winner this time. She hated this person very much, and she wouldn't entrust her life to this kind of person even if she was beaten to death. But she had no choice. After all, this represented the credibility and face of the whole West Island, and she couldn't just say no to it. After half a month, in everyone's expectation, the Island Master's Palace finally opened to the public again. All the trial takers who had participated in the West Island trial were invited to the side courtyard of the palace, in the courtyard of the transmission formation. Today, the final winner of the West Island trial would be publicly judged here. The reason why they didn't choose the more grand and formal square outside was mainly to take care of the trial takers. After all, these treasures would be taken away after the evaluation. As the saying went, one shouldn't show one's wealth. If they were placed in a public place outside, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't get into trouble later. Now they were placed in the relatively secret side courtyard of the Island Master's Palace. Although this kind of thing couldn't be completely eliminated, it was better. The side courtyard was heavily guarded, and it was crowded with people. Not only a group of trial takers gathered here, but also the branch managers of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, the Central Chamber of Commerce, the Wealthy Chamber of Commerce, and so on. As the most authoritative industry insiders, they were the important judges specially invited by West Island. After a brief opening speech, everyone soon got to the long-awaited topic. A group of West Island disciples took out the previous registration books and asked the trial takers to take them out one by one to compare in public, and a group of judges evaluated them on the spot. Only the one with the highest evaluation would have the last laugh. This was undoubtedly a treasure appraisal conference. Every time someone took out a rare treasure of heaven and earth, there would be a burst of whispers in the side courtyard. Many people knew that they couldn't compare with other trial takers, but this time they could see so many kinds of treasures of heaven and earth, which could be regarded as an eye-opener, and they didn't come in vain. Of course, there were also some trial takers who were very ambitious. Relying on the rare treasures of heaven and earth in their hands, they thought that this time they could have a chance to become Ning Shangling's son-in-law, and then they could have a meteoric rise. However, when it was Kong Mingming's turn, everything stopped abruptly. Thunder Xianrot Tan. It turned out to be the legendary Thunder Xianrot Tan. He was sweating profusely. He had unknowingly incurred the wrath of the crowd. But it was only in this kind of public place. If there were not so many outsiders present, these impatient disciples of the Western Island would really eat him alive. He had to be careful when he went back later, so as to avoid falling into a trap. But on second thought, Kong Mingming suddenly felt amused. After today, he was destined to be the prince consort of the West Island. For these disciples of the West Island, he was the real master. They wouldn't dare to do anything to harm him, even if they were 100 times braver. Worrying about this kind of thing was completely groundless. Not only that, if one day he was in a good mood, he could even casually find a few beauties in womanland. He could even take advantage of Ning Shangling, this noble and beautiful mother-in-law of his. Just thinking about it made him feel so good that he could fly, seeing the greedy and complacent look on Kong Mingming's face. The disciples of the Western Island became angrier and angrier. Even Ning Shangling, who had always been calm, couldn't help but frown. At the thought of making such a shameless guy her son-in-law, she suddenly felt as disgusted as if she had eaten a fly. Not only Ning Shangling, the mother, but also Yin Xinlan and Lu Ziyu, who were next to her, were furious when they saw this. They looked at each other tacitly, and killing intent flashed across their eyes. If Ning Shangling acquiesced, they didn't mind being killers in the dark. They had watched Ning Shuifei grow up since she was a child. No matter what, they couldn't watch Ning Shuifei jump into the fire pit. And they couldn't allow such a shameless guy like Kong Ming Ming to be the prince consort of the West Island. Ning Shangling shook her head slightly. As Ning Shuafei's mother, she wanted to do this more than anyone else, but another more important identity didn't allow her to do so. Even if she didn't want Kong Ming Ming to be the prince consort of the West Island, she couldn't use such a violent method that could easily lead to gossip. Everyone, it's almost time. Let's take a lunch break first, and the results will be announced in the afternoon. Ning Shangling announced with an indifferent look, and then took the lead to leave the field with Ning Shuafei. The crowd was left stunned. The other trial takers didn't care. Anyway, it was obvious that they had nothing to do with it. It didn't matter to them whether the results were announced now or in the afternoon. If they couldn't wait, they could leave now. However, Kong Ming Ming's expression at the moment was really wonderful. He was complacent just now, and even prepared to give his acceptance speech, but when he heard Ning Shangling's words, he almost bit his tongue off. Senior cultivators didn't even need to eat, drink, or go to the toilet during lunch break, and it was common knowledge that they didn't need to sleep or rest. Damn it, where did lunch break come from? For a moment, feeling the malicious eyes of the West Island disciples from all directions, Kong Ming Ming was so scared that he almost peed his pants. His future mother-in-law deliberately left such a blank period of time. Could it be that she wanted to give these West Island disciples a chance to take advantage of it? Kong Ming Ming was a schemer himself, so when he encountered this kind of thing, his mind was naturally full of conspiracy theories. Think about it. If they could kill him before the results were announced, then they could take back the Thunder Abstruse Vines justifiably, and the price that the West Island had to pay was just a scapegoat. It was a good deal, no matter how he thought about it. At this moment, facing the envious eyes of the other trial takers, Kong Ming Ming was sweating profusely, and even his legs were weak from fear. Why didn't Ning Shangling play by the rules? What should he do now? Seeing the other trial takers leave one after another, Kong Ming Ming suddenly felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He subconsciously prepared to run away, but was stopped by Su Lingqiong. Kong Ming Ming suggested nervously, "Child Su, the situation is not good. Why don't we run away now? Anyway, Linny can't come back. As long as we don't let him get involved with Ning Shuafei, we can take the Thunder Abstruse Vines back and complete the task, right? Don't panic." Su Lingqiong snorted. Of course, he also knew that the situation was serious. They had dug up an immature Thunder Abstruse Vines from the roots, and they had greatly offended almost all the West Island disciples. Even if Ning Shangling didn't say anything, the people below might take the initiative to assassinate them. This kind of thing was impossible to guard against. But Kong Ming Ming still wanted to run away. For him, the most dangerous period before the final results were announced, especially in this place where the West Island Masters were everywhere. If someone was ruthless enough to launch a sneak attack on him, he wouldn't even know how he died. To be continued. This book is collected from a website. Please move to the pavilion. The chapters are clear and updated quickly. Chapter 4736. What do you want? Hui Yudi pretended to be calm as she furrowed her brows. She was extremely anxious in her heart. Because this was a place she had specially found for Lin Yi, there was only one exit, but it was completely blocked by Scarface and his men. There was no way to escape, so the only way was to brace herself and scare Scarface away. Nothing much. I just heard from my subordinates that you were still here, so I came over to see if there was anything I could help you with. Scarface smiled. Due to his last bit of fear, he didn't want to force himself on her. If he could make this girl lower her head, that would be for the best. No need. I advise you to quickly take these people away. Otherwise, if they disturb my peace, don't blame me for being impolite. Hui Yudi pretended to be strong as she coldly snorted. Is that so? So the young lady wanted peace and quiet? That's good. But this place is really too lousy. It can't block the wind or the rain. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't seem to have anything to do with peace. Scarface pinched his chin as he laughed. Coyote looked at him coldly and didn't say anything. She didn't know what this guy was planning. The difference in strength between her and the enemy was too great. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she couldn't shed all pretense of cordiality and could only feign civility. Looking at the entire training grounds, I'm afraid that the only place that is quiet is my place. If you don't mind, why don't you come to my place to stay? Scarface suggested maliciously. No need, I'm fine staying here. You guys can go. Coyote immediately refused. Miss, as the saying goes, you rely on your parents at home, and when you go out, you rely on your friends. We met by chance, and this is called fate. I'm sincerely inviting you. Don't you think you're not giving me any face? Scarface's expression changed. Then what do you want? Coyote was shocked. If the other party turned hostile, then today would be really dangerous. I don't want anything. I just want you to stay at my place for a while and accompany me while you're at it. I feel that we can cultivate our relationship. Only then did Scarface reveal his foxtail. With a face full of saliva, he chuckled and said, After all, we're all trapped in this godforsaken place and can't get out. Life has to go on. You're such a beautiful woman. You can't always be a widow with this half-dead guy. What do you say, young lady? Dream on. Coyote's expression immediately turned as cold as ice. It was fine to feign civility, but since the other party had spoken to such an extent, she could not tolerate it. Hey, little girl, let me give you a word of advice. It's best not to say things so ruthlessly. As long as you accompany me for a few days, I guarantee that no one here will dare to touch even a single hair on your head. He was afraid that he would be crushed to death by Lin E in the next moment. He hurriedly came up with an idea and said, Senior, I really didn't say to sleep. I said to let your wife go back with me to choose some good things as a farewell gift for you. It can also be considered a small token of my appreciation. Really? Lin E turned his head to look at Coyote. He held her hand and winked mischievously. At this moment, Coyote was still immersed in the sudden, pleasant surprise. When she felt Lin E hold her hand, she suddenly reacted. Her charming face immediately flushed red. Her cheeks were like burning clouds, and the redness had already reached her ears. She didn't hear a single word that was said clearly. However, she heard the sensitive word wife. Seeing that Lin E didn't have any intention of correcting her, especially when he took the initiative to hold her hand, did this mean that he had tacitly agreed? But he wasn't even ready yet. Wasn't this development a little too fast? How was she going to explain this to Master? Coyote's mind was filled with random thoughts. She only managed to recover when Lin E asked for the second time. After understanding Lin Yi's meaning, she tilted her head and said, It seems so. Then why don't we go and choose some? Chapter 4737. Yes, I'll lead the way. Scarface finally let out a sigh of relief. He had taken a big turn at the gates of hell, but today he really got his life back. Looking at Scarface's sorry figure, Lin E couldn't help but smile. He turned his head and looked deeply at Coyote. He squeezed her hand tightly and said, You've worked hard these days. I'll remember it in my heart. He had never been a man who knew how to say sweet words. No matter how touched he was, he would only say plain and simple words. However, every word came from the bottom of his heart. Not at all. It's what I should do. Coyote blushed and lowered her head. What you should do. A temporary teammate has such a big responsibility. Lin E couldn't help but laugh. No, that. Coyote stuttered for a long time. No matter what, this matter had already exceeded the boundaries of being a temporary teammate. However, as a girl, she couldn't just directly admit it and say that she inexplicably wanted to stay with him for the rest of her life, right? Lin E laughed. Seeing this, he no longer teased her. He immediately grabbed Coyote's hand and directly caught up to Scarface. If he didn't keep a close eye on him, this guy might find a way to escape midway. As Lin E expected, Scarface really did have this idea. Although he knew that he couldn't be Lin Yi's opponent, if he let go midway, he could just find a random corner to hide in. Lin Yi wouldn't even think about finding him again. After all, in terms of familiarity with the trial grounds, no one in the world could surpass him. Unfortunately, seeing Lin Yi casually catch up with him, Scarface's extravagant hopes were immediately shattered. His heart was filled with shock and fear. He didn't dare to have any thoughts of playing tricks and could only obediently do as Lin Yi said. The three of them were extremely fast. Along the way, they were basically rushing at Scarface's top speed. As a peak early-stage mysterious ascended expert, even if he wasn't good at speed, his top speed was definitely not slow. In just an hour, they arrived at the entrance of the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. What are you standing there for? Where was the promised gift? Hurry up and take it out. Do you want me to do it myself? Lin Yi frowned and glanced at Scarface. Scarface was so frightened that he trembled. Trembling with fear, he quickly took out the treasures that he had accumulated over the years. Although his heart ached for these treasures, compared to his life, these treasures were nothing. If the treasures were gone, he could still bring people to continue searching for them. But if he lost his life, then he would lose everything. Looking at the various heavenly treasures piled up into a small mountain in front of him, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Hui Yuti's eyes couldn't help but shine brightly. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but nod his head in agreement. Damn it, the Mountain King profession really had a bright future ahead of him. Previously, he really couldn't tell that Scarface was actually a tycoon. You pick first. Lin Yi smiled at Hui Yuti, and Hui Yuti immediately pounced on him. She wouldn't be courteous to someone like Scarface, and with her experience, it was rare for her to make a mistake when it came to truly good things. After going one round, she picked 4 or 5 items. Every one of them was an extremely rare heaven and earth treasure. Scarface's heart was bleeding as he watched from the side. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yi's prestige was too great, he wouldn't have been able to resist it. At this moment, he couldn't help but want to risk his life. The items that Hui Yuti had picked were all his special treasures. Apart from the legendary Thunder Mystic Vine, they were the most valuable in the entire training ground. In the entire trial ground, they were the most valuable. He had spent dozens of years to collect these few, but in the end, all of them were taken by this little girl, leaving not a single one for him. Scarface wanted to slap himself 14,000 times on the spot. Fuck, it was all because of his cheap mouth. Why did he have to say that he was giving gifts? Even if he wanted to give gifts, he should have found a chance to secretly hide these items. Now everything was exposed to Lin Yi and Hui Yuhao. This was practically sending a sheep into a tiger's mouth. But fortunately, these two people could only take 8 or 10 items at most. No matter how many items they had, they wouldn't be able to take them away. The other slightly inferior heaven and earth treasures could still be left. This time, he would just treat it as him spending money to avoid disaster. Helplessly, Scarface could only comfort himself like this. After waiting for Hui Yuti to finish picking, this little girl was still pouting. If it wasn't for the fact that her backpack was almost broken, she would have taken a few more. In any case, this was a rare opportunity, so it would be a waste not to take it. You won't blame us for taking so many gifts from you, right? Lin Yi looked at Hui Yuti's expression and couldn't help but laugh. He turned his head and glanced at the grimacing Scarface. No, how could that be possible? Scarface hurriedly smiled and shook his head. He forced a smile and said, Senior, it is my honor that you have taken a liking to these items. The more you take, the more you think highly of me. I can't be happier. If you want to take all of them, it's fine. Really? Lin Yi looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Really, it's even truer than real gold. I'm definitely speaking from the bottom of my heart. Scarface patted his chest as he spoke. He wasn't puffing himself up to look impressive, but he was already numb to it. Since the few treasures that he had kept as his trump cards had already been plundered by Hui Yuti, even if 5 or 6 more treasures were taken from him, it wouldn't hurt at all. Oh, since it's so difficult to refuse, then I'll respectfully accept. I'll take them all away. Lin Yi was instantly delighted. He had seen warm and hospitable people, but he had never seen such a warm and hospitable person. Being friends with a tycoon like Scarface was indeed satisfying. Yes, yes. Scarface was still subconsciously echoing. After a moment, he reacted. The dignified mountain king, at the peak of the early stage of the profound ascension realm, looked like he was about to cry. He stammered, "What? Senior, you're not joking, are you?" "No, I'm a very honest person. I usually don't joke with people." Lin nodded solemnly. "No, with so many things, are you sure you could take them away?" The scar-faced man asked cautiously. This was the place he had accumulated over the past few decades. All sorts of heavenly materials and earthly treasures had been piled up into a small mountain. Although the other party was powerful, to say that he could take away all of them was nonsense. "Oh, you don't have to worry about this. Carrying things is my strength." Lin smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, the heavenly and earthly treasures that had piled up like a small mountain in front of him instantly disappeared into thin air. Not a single one was left. Dong! Scarface knelt on the ground on the spot. His expression was one of shock and blood. He was dumbfounded for a long time and couldn't say a word. He felt his eyes go black, and his life was in darkness. Without hesitation, Lin immediately approached the teleportation formation, and another 5 elements murderous aura activated the teleportation. In the afternoon, after experiencing a torturous wait that felt like a year, Kong Ming Ming and Su Lingchong finally got through the daunting experience without mishap, and they successfully waited until the moment when the trial results would be announced. In the side courtyard of the palace, a group of judges and trial takers gathered once again. When they saw Ning Shangling and Ning Shuefei reappear in front of everyone, the corners of Kong Ming Ming's mouth curled up. Looking at Ning Shuefei, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. From now on, this little beauty will belong to him. Seeing Kong Ming Ming's undisguised perverted expression, Ning Shuefei couldn't help but feel nauseous. She looked helplessly at Ning Shangling in front of her, hoping that her mother could help her get rid of this shameless bastard. Unfortunately, in the face of her daughter's request for help, Ning Shangling had no response. As the master of West Island, on this occasion, no matter how much she cared about Ning Shuefei, it was impossible for her to say anything in public. In fact, even if she had arranged any backup plan, it was impossible to let Ning Shuefei know that these dirty things were enough for her as a mother. Now, it was not Ning Shuefei's turn to bear the burden. However, she didn't know that the innocent and kind daughter in Ning Shangling's eyes had secretly made up her mind at this moment. If she really let Kong Ming Ming, this shameless bastard, succeed today, then she would follow the example of Shanghai Laner's small curly bear and find a chance to kill Kong Ming Ming, so that he and Su Lingchong could sympathize with each other. Kong Ming Ming was totally unaware of this. He was still immersed in the dream of ruling the harem of West Island. If Su Lingchong hadn't reminded him from time to time, he would have laughed like a fool. Thank you, judges. All the results of the trial takers have been accurately measured. I believe it is fair and objective enough. I will announce the final result now. Ning Shangling glanced at the audience and announced slowly. Before she finished speaking, everyone's eyes had automatically focused on Kong Ming Ming. Everyone knew that this guy must be the winner who had the last laugh. There was no doubt about it. However, at this moment, a commotion suddenly came from the direction of the teleportation portal not far away. Everyone turned to look, only to find that 2 people had suddenly appeared at the teleportation portal's exit. In an instant, everyone present was dumbfounded. "Hey, everyone is here. It seems that we are not late. How lucky we are." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin smiled faintly as he walked towards them. Huiyuti followed behind him with a light smile. This time, it had been delayed for half a month. Chapter 4740. This disciple from the North Island. Are you questioning the impartiality of our West Island? Yin Xinlan immediately stared at Kong Ming Ming with anger and murderous intent in her eyes. This guy not only dug up the Thunder Xian vine, but also dared to question West Island in public for opening the back door for Lin Yi. In her eyes, it was a deliberate provocation. Did he really think that West Island didn't kill people? No, I just feel strange. Otherwise, how can we explain this guy's sudden appearance? Is that right? Kong Ming Ming was shocked when he saw this, and quickly pulled the other people present to be his shield. After all, everyone, like him, was curious about how Lin Yi and Hui Yudi could suddenly appear. In fact, not only these people at this time, even Ning Shangling, Yin Xinlan, and the other high-level members of West Island also felt that it was incredible. After a whole month and a half, they could still be transmitted out. This was something that had never happened before. This was the first time, which was simply unprecedented. Oh, it seems that you're really curious about this. Then I'll be merciful and tell you that it was the master of the profound ascending stage who sent us out. Lin, he smiled lightly. What? Impossible. If he can send you out, why didn't he come out himself? Kong Ming Ming's brain worked very fast this time, and he immediately found a flaw. Everyone else was also confused, especially Ning, Shangling, and others. They were familiar with the operation of the teleportation formation, and they knew that it was impossible for a master of the profound ascending stage to start the teleportation formation. They had tried many times before, but they had never succeeded. Hee, then you can ask him. That guy's been trapped in there for so many years. Who knows what he has learned? There are so many weird people these days. Lin, he made up irresponsibly. He didn't want others to doubt him, so he simply made up his mind. Anyway, no one could ask the scarred man for confirmation now. Whatever he said, it was useless even if he doubted it. Hui Yudi giggled when she heard this. However, she immediately tightened her expression. Since Lin he didn't want others to know, then she could only accompany him to keep it a secret until the end of time. Everyone looked at each other when they heard this. Scarface and the other trial takers had all seen this before. How could such a greedy and cruel mountain king be so kind as to send someone out for no reason? However, no matter how much they didn't believe it, there was nothing they could do. Just as Lin he thought, there was no way to verify this matter. As long as Hui Yudi did not expose him, he could only allow Lin to spout nonsense, and in the end, it would become a meaningless case without a lead. Kong Ming Ming looked at Lin Yi and snorted coldly. He said arrogantly, "It doesn't matter. You can't pose any threat to me anyway." I'll show you the moment of my final victory. Oh, Lin, he smiled nonchalantly, too lazy to deal with the guy. He turned to Ning Shangling and asked, "I'm sorry, but I didn't say anything. Where can I register the spoils?" Ning Shangling smiled slightly and nodded to the disciple of West Island who was in charge of this matter. Immediately, a judge came over and appraised Lin Yi in public. The result is already obvious. What good treasure can this guy who can't even save his life take out? It's really a waste of everyone's time. Kong Ming Ming sneered on the side. Most of the others had the same idea. However, when they saw clearly what Lin Yi took out, the whole audience suddenly boiled. Thunder Xianrat Tan. It was Thunder Xianrat Tan again. Ning Shangling, Yin Xinlan, and other high-level officials of West Island couldn't help but feel their eyelids twitch. A Thunder Xianrat Tan was dug out by Kong Ming Ming before. That was enough to make them angry. They didn't expect that Lin Yi would take out another one now. How could other disciples of West Island survive? However, when they carefully looked at the Thunder Xianrat Tan that Lin Yi took out, the eyes of the high-level officials of West Island suddenly became much kinder. This was a mature Thunder Xianrat Tan, and it was not uprooted. That was to say, this was completely reasonable, and it was totally different from the one Kong Ming Ming had. Kong Ming Ming suddenly stared at it, and he couldn't say a word. He could only turn his head and look at Su Lingchong next to him. How could this pretentious guy have a Thunder Xianrat Tan? And it's a mature Thunder Xianrat Tan. Su Lingchong also shook his head incredulously. When they went in, there was no mature Thunder Xianrat Tan, and there was no place for Lin, Yi, and Hui Yudi to hide it at that time. How did it come about? The whole audience was in an uproar. Before, Kong Ming Ming was undoubtedly the first with an immature Thunder Xianrat Tan. Unexpectedly, a mature Thunder Xianrat Tan popped out and stepped on Kong Ming Ming. This scene was so dramatic that it seemed to have been discussed. It's impossible. How could it be possible? Where did you get it? Kong Ming Ming stared blankly, and his expression showed that he was about to go crazy. His dream of the harem in West Island was about to come true, but it was suddenly stepped on and smashed into pieces. In particular, the other party was Lin Yi, his sworn enemy. Anyone would go crazy. Oh, it was also given to me by the master of the mysterious ascension stage. He is actually a very good man. Lin Yi's irresponsible answer immediately made the audience's eyes fall to the ground. Kong Ming Ming was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes turned black, and he almost passed out on the spot. The higher one climbed, the harder he fell. At this moment, it was a true portrayal of him. While Lin Yi shocked the audience, Hui Yudi didn't need to win the final victory like him, but she still had to go through the motions. She casually took out 2 treasures of heaven and earth that she extorted from the scarred man, and she could easily deal with it, and she wouldn't lose face for Lu Ziyu. As for the Thunder Xianrat Tan, it was naturally better to hide it as deep as possible. Unless he had to take it, like Lin Yi. Otherwise, only a fool would take it out in public to show off. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble for no reason? In this way, no one could shake Lin Yi's first place. No matter how unwilling Kong Ming Ming was, it was useless. Compared with Lin Yi's Thunder Xianrat Tan, the value of his immature Thunder Xianrat Tan was not just a little bit lower. There was basically no comparison between them. After all, a mature Thunder Xianrat Tan could refine the best quality Thunder Xian pill, while an immature Thunder Xianrat Tan could at most refine a low-grade Thunder Xian pill. The success rate of the former was close to 100%, while the latter was less than 60% at most. What was there to compare? At this time, standing in the corner, Ren Zhongyuan and the others looked at the Thunder Xianrat Tan in Lin Yi's hands from afar. Their faces were filled with greed, and they couldn't help but look at each other. They really didn't think that such a weak guy would be able to get a mature Thunder Xianrat Tan in the end. This kind of heaven-defying luck was really fucking crazy that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.